Chapter 1251. However, the two elders of the Tang family and the Yu family did not take Xiao Chen and his group seriously. In their eyes, although these brats were emitting the aura of venerable ones, they were still very young. It was obvious that they had just broken through in the venerable secret realm. Compared to these elders, they were not even worth mentioning. You old fools dare to block this young master's path? It seems like you're tired of living. Xiao Chen watched as the group of biohumans disappeared. The anger in his heart surged. He did not care who these people in front of him were because he did not care about them at all. Little brat, do you think we'll be scared by a few words? You're too naive. Clan leader Yu looked at Xiao Chen indifferently with his hands behind his back. He said coldly, seeing that you're still young and don't know the strength of me and these people, I'll let you go this time. As long as you kneel down and kowtow 3 times and apologize to us, I'll consider forgiving you. I'm not done yet. Xiao Chen coldly snorted as a cold and disdainful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said word by word, since you think that your lives are too long, then this young master doesn't mind sending you off today. This day next year will be the anniversary of your death. What arrogance. Xiao Chen, I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to make all of us stay here. When Situ Qitian saw that the remaining biohumans were already standing in the middle of the formation, he immediately focused his attention on Xiao Chen and roared fiercely. As soon as he finished speaking, Situ Qitian's aura surged. He activated his heart technique and flew up. He used all of his strength and slammed his palm heavily on Xiao Chen's head, intending to kill him in one move. Xiao Chen crossed his arms and did not move. He smiled as he looked at Situ Qitian, who was getting closer and closer. He did not even take a step back. He did not even have the slightest intention of dodging or defending. Situ Qitian's face revealed a look of surprise. Seeing that his palm wind was about to hit Xiao Chen, why didn't this brat dodge? Could it be that he was unable to move due to the force of the wind from his palm? Or was it because he was too shocked and only knew how to stand there and not move? On the other side, the 2 old men from the Tang family and Yu family were also a little surprised. They looked at each other and thought at the same time, this brat really can't do it. He had probably been scared silly by sect leader Situ. Earlier he had solemnly vowed to keep everyone here, but now he was so oppressed by the other party's aura that he was rooted to the spot. It seemed that he was just an embroidered pillow with a false appearance. However, Jiayuto, who was standing behind Situ Qitian, and elder son, who was standing on the side, had different opinions. They had seen Xiao Chen's methods several times and knew that he must have come prepared. He must have a backup plan waiting. However, Jiayuto and elder son were also puzzled. Sect leader Situ had already used 10% of his power. No matter how cunning Xiao Chen was, he shouldn't be able to avoid it, right? What was his backup plan? Slap. A crisp sound was heard. Everyone immediately put away their thoughts and looked up. At the same time they were dumbfounded. They thought that they would see the scene of Xiao Chen vomiting blood and being sent flying. However, they didn't expect that there was indeed a person flying in the sky, but that person was Situ Qitian. When he looked down again, he saw Xiao Chen standing in the same spot as if nothing had happened. His outstretched palm slowly fell down as he watched the defenseless Situ Qitian fly further and further away in the air with a smile that was not a smile. I remember that the Kuei Shan faction of the outer martial arts world should be your Qitian sect's lackey, right? Xiao Chen smiled coldly and ridiculed him expressionlessly. The father and son of the Kuei Shan faction are both good actors. One can act like a flying dragonfly and the other can fly like a zigzag. It seems that from today onwards, Situ Qitian, you will also have a famous nickname. I think you should be called Situ Fei or Qitian Fei. It sounds very cool. Situ Qitian was flying far away in the sky, so naturally he couldn't answer. Elder son was so angry that his face turned red, but he didn't dare to do anything to Xiao Chen. He could only lower his head and pretend that he didn't hear anything. Xiao Chen looked at Situ Qitian, who finally began to fall, and frowned slightly. He felt that something was wrong because the place where Situ Qitian fell happened to be in the middle of the teleportation array. The protective measures of the array that originally resisted the Thunderball technique didn't seem to detect any threat from Situ Qitian, so it didn't activate in time and let him fall straight down. When Xiao Chen felt that something was wrong, he wanted to rush up and give another palm strike to change Situ Qitian's position, but it was too late. He had just taken a step forward, and he watched as Situ Qitian fell heavily into the array. Boom! Due to the huge impact of Situ Qitian falling from the sky, a hole was directly smashed in the middle of the teleportation array, and a burst of smoke rose up. Then a white light flashed and Situ Qitian, who was unknown whether he was alive or dead, and the remaining few overturned biohumans, disappeared in an instant from the teleportation array. It seemed that they were all sent to the other end of the array to be companions together. When the teleportation ended and everyone disappeared, the entire array seemed to be affected by the big hole that Sidu Chitian had smashed, and it suddenly collapsed. A crackling sound was heard, and the white light in the array gradually dimmed and slowly disappeared, leaving only a pile of broken bricks and tiles. Obviously, this teleportation array had been completely destroyed and had lost its function. Everyone was shocked by this scene. When the last dim white light disappeared, elder son Jiayuto and the old masters of the other two big families finally reacted. They couldn't help but look at each other. This was a big problem. The open heaven gate had been explored in the martial arts world for so long, and this was the only teleportation array that could lead to the cultivation world. Moreover, this array was left behind from ancient times. Now that it had collapsed, no one knew how to repair it. In this way, Sidu Chitian was very likely to be like the people who had explored before, never to return again. Xiaochen also had a headache. He was too unlucky. How could it be so coincidental that the teleportation array was destroyed? Now, even if he wanted to enter the array to explore, he couldn't do it. With nowhere to vent his anger, Xiaochen looked at the few people in front of him with a gloomy face and said coldly, "You guys don't just stand there. Anyway, I've already killed one, so I don't mind killing a few more of you. Whoever wants to accompany that idiot Sidu Chitian on the road to the netherworld, feel free to come and try. I promise to satisfy your needs." Chapter 1252. The few people who were originally full of arrogance were now speechless. The faces of the Tang family head and the Yu family head alternated between red and white. Their expressions were extremely embarrassed. Now, they had already realized that Xiaochen was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. His strength was much higher than theirs. Sidu Chitian, as a venerable perfection, couldn't even last one move against Xiaochen. Who would dare to openly go against him? Elder Sun stared at the collapsed formation silently. His emotions were very complicated. Sidu Chitian was his sect master. Now that he was thrown into the teleportation formation, he couldn't come back. Chitian sect was like a group of dragons without a leader. What was he going to do? As for Jiayuto, he was trembling with fear. He was so scared that his legs were about to turn into jelly. He did not dare to voice any objections. Instead, he carefully took a few steps back and quietly hid himself behind Elder Sun and the others. "All right, since none of you have any objections, then I'll say my opinion." Seeing that the other party had their heads lowered in silence, Xiaochen knew that his move earlier had stunned them. Hence, he took 2 steps forward and stared at Elder Sun as he said, "Son, that fellow Sidu Chitian just said that he's going to pass the position of sect master to Xing Gongzi. Did you hear that?" "What the hell? I didn't." Elder Sun came back to his senses. When he heard what Xiaochen said, he was a little stunned. He didn't know what he was planning. Just as he was about to shake his head to deny it, he saw Xiaochen slowly raise his hand. He was so scared that he trembled and quickly nodded. Yes. Sect Master Sidu did say that." Before Xiaochen could make another move, Elder Sun immediately bowed to Miss Xing behind him. This subordinate greets Sect Master Xing. Although he was extremely unwilling, Elder Sun still respectfully bowed to little Lady Xing. There was no other way. Xiaochen's cultivation was too high. Now that he was watching from the side, he didn't have any confidence in winning. It was better to be honest and not go against him. Looking at Elder Sun's sudden change from arrogance to deference, little Miss Xing was at a loss of what to do. She subconsciously glanced at Xiaochen, not understanding why he suddenly wanted her to be the sect leader. However, it was not appropriate for her to directly ask, so she could only vaguely agree. "Very well, since the Awakening Heaven sect and the Jia family are now my people, we'll count it as 2 against 2 now." Xiaochen could not be bothered to talk nonsense with them, and directly asked about their purpose. "Tell me, what the hell are you doing here? What was on the other side of the portal? Why did you send so many biohumans there?" This. Elder Sun hesitated for a moment, glancing at the Tang and Yu family heads. Their gazes were drifting about, pretending not to see the look in Elder Sun's eyes. Jiayuto was even more exaggerated, his entire body was hidden behind the crowd, completely invisible. "What? Do you also want to try flying?" Xiaochen said coldly when he saw Elder Sun's expression. No, cough, I was just organizing my words. That great hero Xiao, it's like this." Elder Sun was really at his wit's end, so he could only pretend to cough twice and explain in detail. "On the other side of this portal is a place called the World of Cultivators." "World of Cultivators? Is that true?" "You old B***starred, Are you trying to trick me? Xiao Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed as he stared at Elder Sun suspiciously. World of cultivators? This was the second time in a few short days that he had heard of this term. Could it be that the world of cultivators that Elder Sun was talking about was the same place that Hongzhu mentioned? However, what was the matter with the so-called world of cultivators? Since there was already a portal here, why did Hongzhu and the others still want to perform the world of cultivators? If it was a world of cultivators, then what were the sacrifices? Could it be Xin Jingxian and the others? Xiao Chen's alarm bells went off in his head. If Jingxian was participating in the world of cultivators' sacrifice, then it would be dangerous. Would the world of cultivators' sacrifice threaten her life? Could it be that she specially went to the venerable realm to make a breakthrough just for this matter? Elder Sun naturally didn't know the thoughts that flashed through Xiao Chen's mind. He continued to honestly say, "It's true, great hero Xiao. However, the world of cultivators is especially dangerous because our disciples from the Awakening Heaven sect had explored it before, but none of them returned. Therefore we chose to first experiment on the biohumans." Experiment on the biohumans? They can only accept orders and can't speak. How can they experiment? Cheng Minjing was worried about her uncle and immediately asked anxiously. After asking, Cheng Minjing looked at Tang Tang apologetically. After all, she didn't mean to mention her sad past. Tang Tang slightly shook her head and revealed a comforting smile, indicating that she didn't mind. The biohumans have cameras on them so they can record the scene after entering the magic formation at any time. Elder Sun glanced at the sullen Xiao Chen and explained obediently, the second generation of biohumans developed by the Awakening Heaven sect can be controlled from a distance, so we don't have to enter the world of cultivators ourselves. We only need to command them to explore the way outside the magic formation. Now that the magic formation has been destroyed, how can I know whether what you said is true or not? Xiao Chen was worried about Xin Jingxian, and his tone carried a hint of killing intent. What if you randomly make up a story and fabricate a world of cultivators? Xiao Chen Elder Sun didn't lie. Seeing that the situation was a little stiff, family head Tang quickly added, this magic formation can indeed lead to the world of cultivators. Someone has been there before and came back successfully. After he came back, his strength was greatly improved and he could even kill a venerable in the peak at will. He is just as powerful as you. Family head Yu nodded in agreement, but he was a little puzzled. This Xiao Chen killed Sidu Qitian with one move. Isn't he from the world of cultivators? If he really didn't come from the world of cultivators, where did such a powerful junior come from? Someone else had been there. Who was that person? Didn't you just say that no one came back? Xiao Chen glanced coldly at family head Tang and asked rhetorically. Well, family head Tang and family head Yu both showed a trace of fear. Obviously they were a little afraid of this person's name. They turned to look at Elder Sun who was standing next to them, indicating that they wanted him to continue. Ahem ahem ahem. Elder Sun coughed twice unnaturally and glared at his two stupid teammates with resentment. They really couldn't do anything right but were good at spoiling things. Originally he only wanted to mention the world of cultivators, but now he had spilled everything. Chapter 1253. Is your throat not feeling well? Do you want me to treat it for you? Xiao Chen's voice sounded like a demon to Elder Sunday. He quickly shook his head. Seeing that he could no longer hide it, he could only say, that person is the supreme sect leader of our Awakening Heaven sect. He was also the great devil of the inner martial arts world. Turning his head to look at the destroyed teleportation formation, Elder Sun's voice was a little hoarse. The supreme sect leader went to the world of cultivation through this teleportation formation and came back not long after. Moreover, his strength rose rapidly and he successfully broke through the limits of the Venerable Realm Peak. He was in the limelight in the inner martial arts world for a while, so everyone was looking forward to going to the world of cultivation to take a look. That's it? That's it? Xiao Chen asked again patiently. That's it. Elder Sun looked at the angry Xiao Chen and replied with a stutter. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Then I don't understand. Xiao Chen suddenly exploded and shouted fiercely at Elder Sun, you took my father away. I'll take it that you took him away at random. Then I'll admit it. But since I was driven out of my family, your Awakening Heaven sect has been going against me time and time again. What the hell are you trying to do? Actually, we didn't do anything. Oh no, there's a reason for this. Elder Sun did not expect Xiao Chen to suddenly become angry. He was so scared that he trembled. He first shook his head, but after thinking about it, he nodded. Looked very funny. What reason? What the hell does your supreme sect leader have to do with me? Could it be that he has some special perverted plot? Or do you think I'm easy to bully so you specifically picked me to deal with? Xiao Qin stared at Elder Sun angrily and asked repeatedly. This. Elder Sun looked a little embarrassed. He hesitated for a long time but could not say anything. Elder Sun, hurry up and say it. Everyone is still waiting here. Don't waste time. Old Master Tang could not help but say. In fact, his subtext was that everyone's lives were in the hands of this death god, Xiao Qin. If you want to die, don't drag others down with you. Oh. Hero Xiao, if I tell you the reason, don't be too angry. Elder Sun struggled in his heart for a while and asked tentatively. Hurry up and speak. Don't talk nonsense. What a waste of time. Xiao Qin waved his hand impatiently. Elder Sun sorted out his thoughts and said slowly, Actually, your mother is the eldest daughter of a family in the inner martial arts world. She once went to the Demon Star sect to train. Our Awakening Heaven sect's supreme sect master, Situ Haoyin, accidentally saw her and fell in love with her immediately. He has always treated her as his crush. Xiao Qin frowned slightly. His mother? Could it be that his mother, who had been missing since he was a child, was also related to Awakening Heaven Gate? At that time Yi Xiaoya was so close to him. Could it be that she was also related to his mother? Elder Sun carefully looked at Xiao Qin. When he saw that he did not interrupt, he let out a sigh of relief and said, In the end, I did not expect that your mother and that little Xiao Feng would be together with your father. Our supreme sect master was very angry and in a rage. He captured your mother? Oh? That means that your wretched sect master not only captured my mother, but also harmed my father. Then he deliberately came back to deal with me? That's quite a good plan. He wants to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. He wants to make our Xiao family extinct, right? Xiao Qin clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he said each word. Such a ruthless sect with such malicious intentions. If it were not for the fact that Elder Sun still had some value, he would have killed him with a punch. Lady Xing, who was standing beside Xiao Qin, also had a face full of anger. She had never expected that Elder Sun would want her to deal with Xiao Qin for this reason. Isn't this going too far? Jia Muzhen, Qing Menjing, and the other ladies were also extremely angry. Tian Soran was already rubbing her palms together, waiting for Xiao Qin's husband to say the word. Then she would immediately rush forward and beat up that Elder Sunday. She would treat it as helping her husband vent his anger. Seeing that the group of people in front of him were filled with anger and murderous intent, Elder Sun's legs became a little weak. He hurriedly explained, No, that's not it. We actually did not want to kill you. Besides, I have also sent young Master Xing to save you several times. How could this be considered extinct? Great Hero Xiao, you are thinking too much. We definitely did not have such intentions. Is that so? Xiao Qin sneered and immediately found the loophole in Elder Sun's words. This is even more contradictory. Don't think that I have forgotten that previously in Songning City in the secular world, Chao Yuliang and Qing Mingqiang really tried their best to kill me. When the two old masters of the Tang and Yu clan heard Xiao Qian's words, their eyes instantly became rounder than copper bells. They felt that it was extremely unbelievable. What? This guy was actually from the secular world. How could a lowly and barren place like the secular world cultivate an expert who was even more powerful than a venerable full circle? Was he dreaming? This. Elder Sun's face turned pale and cold sweat dripped down. He mumbled and didn't know what to say. His whole body was trembling like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. Also, that father and son Ma Zhuzi and Ma Longting from the Kuei Mountain sect, they were also ordered by you guys, right? You're determined to kill me. Xiao Qin paced back and forth and asked again, In the end at that time, you sent little Miss Xing to save me. I say, what's wrong with your Awakening Heaven sect? Did Situ Qitian's head get pierced? Or did that supreme sect leader go crazy? Why did he do this kind of nonsense? Every time he recalled this experience, Xiao Qin felt that it was thrilling and lucky. In the past in Songning City, he was not only expelled from his clan, but also tormented by Chao Yuliang and Qing Mingqiang to the point of almost falling off a cliff. If it wasn't for his good luck in meeting his savior, the Elder Heaven Ancestor, he would have probably rotted into a pile of bones at the bottom of the cliff. Later on, when he returned to school, he experienced a few more murders. If it wasn't for the fact that he already had a little bit of strength at that time, in addition to the support of Missy, Bei Bei and Goddess Shen, he might have died in one of the traps. When he went to the outer Wuling, he would be chased by Ma Liwei from heaven to earth. He would have to hide like a stray dog. Even when he went to the morning market to set up a breakfast stall, he would have to be monitored by Miss Xing. It was simply too tragic. Along the way, Xiaoqin felt that it was a miracle that he was still alive. Fortunately, he had the Elder Heaven ancestor to guide him in all aspects, the trust and help of a few female confidants, and the help of those loyal and righteous brothers. Otherwise, his current fate would probably be worse than Sidu Qitian's. Chapter 1254. Actually, Hero Xiao, this is what happened. Elder Sun knew that if he didn't explain everything today, he wouldn't be able to get through this. He could only smile bitterly and say, "In the beginning, Awakening Heaven sect did want to get rid of you, but this has nothing to do with me. It was an order from our sect's Supreme Elder. I was only responsible for passing it down and letting the people below carry it out. Don't take it to heart." Wait, what did you say? Supreme Elder? Xiaoqin waved his hand to stop Elder Sun's words. He asked in surprise, "In your Awakening Heaven sect, other than that Hao Tian who is the Supreme Sect Master, there is another Supreme Elder? Was he the one who wanted to kill me?" Xiaoqin, who was originally filled with anger, felt a little baffled. The relationship of this Awakening Heaven sect was really messy. What was going on? Yes. Elder Sun nodded obediently and explained, "Our Awakening Heaven sect has two Supreme Sect Masters and Supreme Elders. The Sect Master's strength is relatively high, while the Elders are responsible for some of the complicated affairs in the sect. According to what you said, Sidu Qitian isn't considered a leader in your sect? He's just an errand boy?" Xiaoqin looked at the ruins of the spell formation. He didn't expect that this incomparably arrogant Sidu Qitian was just a small fry. Elder Sun sighed softly and shook his head. Back then, the Supreme Sect Master left not long after returning from the immortal cultivation world. Before leaving, he passed the position of the Sect Master to Sidu Qitian and set the rule that the sect's disciples can no longer enter the immortal cultivation world through the spell formation. Little girl Xing nodded slightly. She also knew about this rule. It was just that the sect's disciples can't go to the mysterious place, through the spell formation. At that time she didn't understand what it was. When she asked others, they didn't say anything, so she didn't take it to heart. After the Supreme Sect Master left, the Supreme Elder, who has always been responsible for our sect's internal affairs, secretly controlled the power of Awakening Heaven sect through Situ Qitian. Elder Sun lowered his head and said softly, "Supreme Sect Master had always thought that Qitian Sect Master was his man. I didn't expect that Qitian Sect Master had already sided with Supreme Elder." Xiaoqin rolled his eyes quietly. He did not expect that Awakening Sect, the leader of the internal world of martial artists and a giant of the evil cult, would have such complicated factions. It seemed that the Grand Elder didn't have any good intentions. However, what was the current strength of that fellow? Most importantly, Elder Sun then pointed at the formation and continued, "Grand Elder has always been very interested in going to the cultivation world and wanted to restart this plan. After all, everyone wants to have more power." However, sect leader Grand Elder strictly forbade this. The sect rules cannot be easily changed, so this matter was put on hold. Wait a minute, I'm even more confused about this." Xiaoqin couldn't help but ask directly, "What does it have to do with me whether he can go to the cultivation world or not? Why do you keep coming here to plot against me? Does he also have a grudge against me? Or is he the same as that sect leader Haotian, especially infatuated with my mother? One snatched her away and the other wanted to make a move against me? He has no grudge against you, but he does have some relationship with your mother." Elder Sun swallowed hard and then explained, "It is because of this matter of going to the cultivation world that he specially came to find you." Xiaoqin raised his eyebrows and simply didn't ask any more. He waited for Elder Sun to continue. Because after sect leader Grand Elder wandered, he disappeared for many years and didn't come back. Grand Elder thinks that sect leader Grand Elder might have died or gone to another plane and won't come back. So, he wants to use you to see if he can lure sect leader Grand Elder out. If he can't be lured out, it proves that he has completely disappeared. Elder Sun spent a lot of effort to finish explaining. He was so tired that he was sweating profusely. "The more I listen to you, the more confused I become." Xiaoqin didn't buy it and continued to ask, "How can you use me to lure that Situ Haotian out? I'm not even his biological son." At this point, a thought suddenly appeared in Xiaoqian's mind. Could it be that my biological father isn't Xiaofeng? But that Situ Haotian and my mother gave birth to me? Isn't that a bit too melodramatic? No, absolutely impossible. You are not sect leader Grand Elder's son, but you are the son of the person he loves the most. Elder Sun was very smooth this time, Don't look at our sect leader Grand Elder who has 3 wives and 4 concubines. The person he loves the most in his heart is still your mother. If you encounter any danger in the secular world or the martial world, then your mother will certainly come to your rescue regardless of everything. Then of course sect leader Grand Elder who follows her will not just sit back and do nothing. He will certainly help. Hearing this, Xiaoqin finally understood the ins and outs of the matter. If his mother had been watching him, if his life was in danger, she would appear to save him. Naturally, that sect leader Grand Elder Situ Haotian would also rush over and appear in front of the world. After thinking through this logic, Xiaoqin couldn't help but curse in his heart. It seemed that this sect leader Grand Elder really had too many chores to handle. Why did he have to make such a simple matter so complicated and meticulous? Ordinary people really couldn't understand. It seemed that he was indeed made for a schemer. Elder Sun saw that after his tireless explanation, Xiaoqin finally showed a look of realization. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief and wiped the sweat off his forehead. This roundabout explanation was much more tiring than fighting 300 rounds with the enemy. What happened after that? Xiaoqin thought through the key points in the front and began to ask about what happened after that. After Chao Yuliang and the others failed, even the Kuei Mountain sect fell. Why didn't you guys chase after me? Shouldn't you be chasing after me? It's very simple. Previously, when Chao Yuliang and the Kuei Mountain sect made a move, that was a matter between the secular world and the martial world. It had nothing to do with our Awakening Heaven sect. Elder Sun shrugged and replied, but if we made a move on you and the sect leader found out, wouldn't all our previous efforts be in vain? Wouldn't we be greatly implicated? So in order to monitor my every move, you purposely sent the ignorant Lady Xing to my side? Xiaoqin asked coldly. Elder Sun nodded and said helplessly, we secretly arranged for you to be in danger without Awakening Heaven sect's participation. We wanted to see if your mother and sect leader Grand Elder would appear and save you. If not, we would let young Master Xing, who was guarding by the side, save you and not let you die. Then we would create more danger. Chapter 1255. TSK, so that's how it is. You guys have really put in a lot of effort. I think you can act in an Infernal Affairs movie. Xiaoqin raised his eyebrows and said sarcastically. Behind him, Jia Muzin, Qing Menjing, and the other women also showed a look of contempt at the same time. Obviously, they did not have a good impression of the so-called Grand Supreme Elder. In order to lure out the Grand Supreme sect leader and Xiaoqian's mother, he actually did such a despicable thing to Xiaoqian and had to pretend to be innocent. This person was really bad. Lady Xing also frowned slightly. She knew that she was sent to spy on Xiaoqian to lure out a person, but she did not know that there was such a big game of chess behind the scenes. She also did not expect that she would indirectly become the Grand Supreme Elder's accomplice, and almost caused Xiaoqian's death a few times. She could not help but feel a little guilty in her heart. We were also forced to. In the face of Xiaoqian's sarcasm, Elder Sun did not dare to refute. He could only smile apologetically and said, don't be fooled by the fact that sect leader Qi Tian is usually very energetic and prestigious in the inner martial arts world. In fact, he is just a chess piece in the hands of the Grand Supreme Elder, and I am just an errand boy. Naturally, I would not dare to openly disobey the order. Then Situ Qitian's plan to restart the immortal cultivation world was also suggested by the Grand Supreme Elder, right? Is he not afraid of the Grand Supreme sect leader coming back for revenge? Xiaoqin ignored Elder Sun's humble flattery and asked indifferently. After so many tests on you, the Supreme Sect leader didn't show up again. So, we speculated that he might have died or left the inner martial arts world. That's why the Supreme Sect leader made up his mind to restart the plan. Elder Sun spread his hands and answered in a very natural manner. In fact, Elder Sun was also very afraid that the Grand Supreme Sect leader would appear again, but after all, the Grand Supreme Elder was now the person in charge of Qi Tian sect. So he could only do as he was told. Xiaoqin nodded in understanding. Suddenly he thought of something and asked, by the way, what was the situation with the Devil Sect leader election in the outer martial arts world? At first, Ma Wuxia of the Kuei Mountain sect didn't agree to let me be the sect master of the Devil Sect. Why did he agree later? Thinking of the matter regarding the Demon Sect master, Xiaoqin felt that it was a little strange. After he became the sect master, those people's attitudes seemed to have changed a few times. Could it be that the Supreme Elder of Awakening Sect was playing tricks behind the scenes? That matter was naturally done to lure out the Supreme Sect Master. Elder Sun sighed and said, in addition to being the sect master of Qitian sect, Hao Yin is also the sect master of the dark sect in the inner martial arts world. He is extremely overbearing and tough. If he knows about this, he will definitely not allow the outer martial arts world to have another sect master of the dark sect. It seems that in order to lure out that Situ Hao Yin, aside from dealing with me, you also came up with a lot of tricks. Xiao Qin said with a faint smile. At first, we didn't expect that you would be involved in this matter. Elder Sun glanced at Xiao Qin and said helplessly, at that time, we thought that if that idiot Ma Wuxia became the sect master, the supreme sect master might appear out of rage. But if you were the sect master because of your mother's relationship, the supreme sect master might very likely turn a blind eye to it. Xiao Qin suddenly understood. No wonder Ma Wuxia was so unhappy when he became the sect master of the devil sect. At first, he thought that he only obstructed his path to becoming the sect master of the devil sect. He didn't expect that he had obstructed their plan. Thinking about how Ma Wuxia took the initiative to flatter him later, it was probably because he didn't want the supreme sect master to see that they had a dispute with him. Otherwise, if he was accidentally killed, they would be punished by the supreme sect master for revenge. Thinking back, when little Miss Xing first appeared on the surface, she was always going against him. However, when Ma Baobao was blinded by revenge for his son's death and chased after him, she was protecting him in the dark. Thinking about it, other than being worried that he would really be killed, she was also afraid of accidentally offending the supreme sect leader, so she did this. After going back and forth for a long time, Xiao Qin finally understood what was going on. It seemed that the tyrannical and selfish supreme sect master had gone to the immortal cultivation world and became so arrogant. He didn't want others to also gain strength, so he gave the order not to restart the immortal cultivation world project. Unfortunately, the supreme sect master was not a person who knew his place. After the supreme sect master went out for a period of time, he secretly set up a battle array and secretly used Xiao Qin as a chess piece to test the waters. At the same time, he also used other methods to lure Situ Hao Yin out. After trying many times, the Grand Supreme Elder found that no matter how he jumped, the Grand Supreme Sect leader never appeared, so he gradually let down his guard and made up his mind to restart the world of cultivation plan, so that he could also go in and show off. However, because he didn't have the experience of predecessors, the Supreme Sect Master was afraid that if he went in rashly, there would be unpredictable situations. Therefore he arranged for disciples to explore the way first, but in the end no one came back. Although he failed to explore the way, he was not willing to give up, so he created a cyborg experiment. He joined forces with the three big families to capture people everywhere, causing the whole martial arts world and the secular world to be in a state of panic and unrest. All of this was just to satisfy his selfish desires. The more Xiao Qin thought about it, the angrier he got. He didn't expect that there would be a group of people above Situ Qitian. This was 2F** King Bad**. He thought that as long as he got rid of Qitian men, the whole thing would end. In the end, he didn't expect that a clown like the Supreme Sect Master would appear. What's the strength of your Supreme Sect Master? He could subdue Situ Qitian and control the entire Qitian men, so he should be more than a 10th level perfected martial venerable, right? Xiao Qin suppressed his anger and asked calmly. He's really quite powerful. At the mention of the Supreme Sect Master, Elder Sun's expression became a little unnatural. He looked very afraid and said hesitantly, logically speaking, he should also be a perfected martial venerable expert. After all, this is the highest level in the martial arts world. If he wants to break through to a higher level, he must go to the immortal cultivation world to find an opportunity, but... Elder Sun paused for a moment and turned back to look at the collapsed formation. Then he turned back to look at Xiao Qin fearfully and continued, however, our sect master Qitian couldn't even last one move against him. The reason why he stopped was because Elder Sun suddenly realized that apart from the Supreme Sect Master, there was another person who was equally terrifying. That was Xiao Qin in front of him. Wasn't Situ Qitian also sent flying by a slap from Xiao Qin? Moreover, he couldn't even see how strong Xiao Qin was. How powerful was he? Chapter 1256. Xiao Qin didn't notice Elder Sun's pause. Instead, he frowned slightly and thought to himself, this Grand Supreme Elder does seem to have some ability. Could it be that he's also a cultivator? Is he on the same level as me? But if he's a cultivator, it's impossible for there to be no signs at all. Secretly shaking his head, Xiao Qin gave up on the idea of letting little Lady Xing return to Qitian sect alone to investigate the situation. If he let little Lady Xing return alone, her strength was still shallow and he didn't know if the other party already had any suspicions, so there would definitely be danger. Forget it, It's better to let her follow me. It's safer this way. I'll wait for that Grand Supreme Elder to take the initiative to find me. That's right, where is your Grand Supreme Elder now? Xiao Chen pondered for a moment and felt that it was better to understand more about the Grand Supreme Elder. Otherwise he would be in the dark while he was in the light. This guy was so cunning. If the people around him were to be attacked again, it would be troublesome. I'm not too sure about this. Elder Sun shook his head and said helplessly, he rarely shows himself. I heard that he hides in seclusion in the sect all year round. Even I don't have the qualifications to come into contact with him. Then who does he usually meet with? Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect this old thing to be so arrogant. He only communicates with Qi Tian sect leader. Then, through Qi Tian sect leader, he conveys information to us and assigns tasks. Elder Sun explained obediently. Xiao Chen had already guessed this answer. Hearing this, he continued to ask, if that's the case, then you should know where he is in seclusion, right? I'm really not too sure. Qi Tian sect leader has never told us. Elder Sun shook his head again. He himself had only heard of this Grand Supreme Elder. He didn't know anything else. You don't know this and you don't know that. Are you even an elder of Qi Tian sect? You're just a bystander, right? Do you want me to help you loosen your muscles and improve your memory? Xiao Chen saw that Elder Sun didn't know anything and fiercely bared his teeth at him. So, Hero Xiao, I really don't know. Elder Sun was so scared that his legs went soft and he almost knelt down. He explained with a sobbing tone, Sect Master Qi Tian's deterrent power is already very great. That Grand Elder is much more powerful than Sect Master. Even if I have more curiosity and doubts in my heart, I don't dare to ask too much. If I accidentally annoy them, wouldn't I have to bear the consequences? Xiao Chen glared at Elder Sun, but he didn't really hit him. After all, Xiao Chen knew that this guy was telling the truth. He could only sigh inwardly, feeling a headache coming on. If he couldn't uncover the Great Elder, then little Miss Xing wouldn't be able to officially take over Awakening Heaven sect. If that happened, then it would definitely affect his next plan. There were 3 big aristocratic families and 1 big demonic sect. Other than the Tang family and the Yu family, the Jia family had basically become Xiao Chen's left and right arms. Awakening Heaven sect, with little Miss Xing, could barely be considered their own power. As for the Tang and Yu families, after the 2 old patriarchs saw the situation, they would naturally not do anything stupid. If they didn't, they would be beaten up a few times and they would be well behaved. Now, the only thing that Xiao Chen was worried about was the Grand Elder of Awakening Heaven sect. This old fellow was simply a ticking time bomb. Moreover, he didn't know when he would suddenly explode. After hearing the ins and outs of Elder Sun's story, Xiao Chen knew that sooner or later, he would have to make a trip to the immortal cultivation world to find his father. During this period of time, he absolutely couldn't allow the Grand Elder to act recklessly in the immortal cultivation world. If he went to the immortal cultivation world and had no time to spare, then this old thing would take the opportunity to do something unfavorable to the Jia family and little Miss Xing. If that happened, then he would really be at a loss. Ding dong ding dong. Just as Xiao Chen was in a dilemma and felt that his hands were tied, a sound suddenly came from Elder Sun's body. Everyone present was stunned for a moment. Elder Sun was the first to react. He quickly took out a tablet and quickly tapped on the screen a few times. Xiao Chen's thoughts were suddenly interrupted. He couldn't help but angrily stare at Elder Sun and said sinisterly, "The one with the surname Sun, I realize that you are quite broad-minded. At this time you still have the mood to go online and date? You are really leisurely." Elder Sun was so frightened by Xiao Chen's killing intent that he trembled violently. The tablet in his hand almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, his eyes and hands were sharp and he grabbed it in time. "That. Hero Xiao, it's not what you think." Elder Sun smiled and explained, "This tablet is connected to the camera on the body of the cyborgs. I originally thought that the array had collapsed and the camera could not be connected. I didn't expect that there would be a signal now. Therefore, I wanted to quickly see the movements of the cyborgs and observe the situation in the immortal cultivation world." "Oh, this thing can still be used? Come, let me see the situation inside." Xiao Chen immediately walked over, took the tablet and carefully stared at the image on the screen. Cheng Minjing and Tang Tang immediately walked over to see if they could find any key clues from the camera. On the other side, Old Master Tang and Old Master Yu also wanted to see the situation in the immortal cultivation world. However, they were afraid of Xiao Chen's power, so they hesitated for a few steps and did not have the courage to walk over. In order to smoothly capture the situation in the immortal cultivation world, Qi Tianmen had equipped all the cyborgs that entered the transmission array with professional cameras. At this time, the screen of the tablet had been separated into more than a dozen pictures by software. Just like the surveillance cameras in the building, each picture was showing a different image. As each camera was installed on the chest of the cyborgs, the angle of the recording could only show the scene in front of the cyborgs. There were no recording tools for the cyborgs themselves, so it was impossible to tell who was taking the video. Xiao Qin and Cheng Menjing also could not find the familiar figure in the video. What was even more ridiculous was that after Xiao Qin got the tablet, he only looked at it for a few seconds before all the images on the screen suddenly became more and more blurry. Not long after, the entire screen was filled with snowflakes. It looked like an old-fashioned television that couldn't receive any signal. Damn. What kind of stupid thing did you buy? Xiao Qin clicked on the screen a few times in confusion, but still found that there was no response. How can this be a broken toy? This is the original Applejack. Elder Son was originally sticking his head out to take a look, but when he heard Xiao Qin's words, he immediately retorted. After turning it over to take a look, Xiao Qin found that there was really an Apple logo on the back of the tablet. Chapter 1257. Xiao Qin could not help but furrow his brows as he asked, "Mr. Sun, could this tablet of yours be a counterfeit? I haven't looked at it for a while, why can't the image be displayed?" "No way. I bought this iPad from abroad, and I even have a formal receipt. How can our awakening sect lack this little money?" Elder Son was taken aback. At first he didn't quite believe it. He thought that Xiao Qin had done something to blackmail him. He quickly stretched his head to take a look and found that there was really no image on the screen. Xiao Qin was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He directly handed over the tablet, crossed his arms in front of his chest, stared at Elder Son with anger and said coldly, "Don't look at it blindly. Hurry up and fix this thing or I'll twist your head off and kick it like a ball." Elder Son carefully held the tablet in his hand. He first pressed the refresh button a few times and found that it didn't work, so he turned off the software. After a while he turned it back on again. The result was still the same. There was no image on the screen and it was still a vast expanse of snowflakes. At his wit's end, Elder Son had to display the usual routine of the secular world's network management. He first turned off the tablet, then took out the wireless network card inside, carefully checked it, wiped the dust, then inserted it back in and turned it back on. Looking at the tablet screen gradually brightening, Elder Son silently prayed in his heart, hoping that there would be no more problems. After turning it on, Elder Son immediately opened the software, but to his disappointment, the monitoring screen was still the same. He couldn't receive any signal at all, only a snowflake rain. "You've been fiddling with it for a long time. Is it done? It can't be the same as before, right?" Looking at Elder Son clumsily fiddling for a while, Xiao Qin, who was waiting at the side, was a little bored, so he impatiently urged, "Xiao, I've studied it and don't think it's the tablet's problem. It's probably that the signal in the cultivation world is cut off and can't be transmitted back, which causes this phenomenon," Elder Son concluded. Just now, Elder Son used another software to open a web page and found that the network was very smooth. After switching back to the monitoring software, he tried to refresh the screen a few times, but there was still no screen. He had no choice but to give up. Hearing Elder Son's words, Tang family head and Yu family head's expressions were a little disappointed. Who would have thought that the perfect plan that they had painstakingly prepared for so many years would be ruined just like that? Jiayuto also hung his head dejectedly as if his father had died. Originally, he wanted to take advantage of this plan to enter the world of cultivators and properly increase his strength. Then he would replace Jia Jinyan and become the person in charge of the Jia clan. At that time he would kick Jia Muzin away and replace him with his own son. In the end, he did not expect that after such a long time, the teleportation circle would be destroyed, and there would be no news of the biohumans. Not only did he gain nothing, but the spiritual jades used to teleport the biohumans were also wasted. Communication devices could not be contacted for the time being, and everyone was a little unwilling. However, the people from the three big families still had a glimmer of hope in their hearts. After all, no matter what, Sidu Qitian had also entered the world of cultivators. Even if it was unknown whether he was dead or alive, they believed that he would not be directly destroyed by a slap from Xiaoqin, right? As long as Situ Qitian could enter the world of cultivators, he would be considered an expert with the strength of a venerable paragon. After the injury from that slap from Xiaoqin had healed, he might even be able to obtain some benefits in the world of cultivators. At that time, he might even be able to safely return to the internal martial arts world. Although Situ Chichen could no longer be teleported out after the teleportation circle here was destroyed, these people did not take this to heart. Since the world of cultivators was so powerful, he should be able to return through other means. If there was really no other way, then wouldn't it be fine to create another teleportation circle here? Although those people were hoping to get lucky, Xiaochen no longer had the patience to continue waiting. He felt that there was not much use just waiting here foolishly. Besides, he did not know what the hell the world of cultivators was. Although Xiaochen wanted to go in immediately to find his father's whereabouts, he had other things to do at the moment. He had to arrange everything properly. Xiaochen was not a person who cared about his head and ignored his tail. He could not abandon everyone and leave. At least now he knew that there was a supreme elder in Qitian sect. Now that he had understood the situation, Xiaochen did not intend to keep this old guy and let him play some tricks behind his back. Otherwise, if he did not care about it, it would definitely be bad in the future. Xiaochen looked at Xing Chik and began to assign tasks. Xing Gongzi, you follow me to Qitian sect and find that supreme elder. I want to meet this old bastard and see how powerful he is. Since the decision had been made, Xiaochen was too lazy to continue wasting time here. If these people were willing to wait, then let them be. Anyway, the teleportation circle had been completely destroyed. In a short period of time, he was not afraid of what they would do. Oh, okay. Xing Chik nodded obediently. Xing Chik originally had a grudge against Qitian sect for using her countless times. She wanted to ask for an explanation. When she heard that Xiaochen was willing to bring her along, she was a little excited and immediately agreed. Menjing, you and Jiamuzan will stay here first. Help me keep an eye on these old guys. If they dare to act blindly without thinking. Xiaochen touched his chin and glanced back and forth between Elder Sun and the Tang family patriarchs, as well as Jiayuto, who was hiding in the back and pretending not to be there. Hero Xiao, we will definitely not act blindly without thinking. We will wait here for Qitian sect leader to come out. We will not do anything else. Family Patriarch Tang was a little flustered and quickly waved his hand. Tian Suruan, on the other hand, was eager to get into action. She waved her little fist and shouted, Husband Xiaochen, tell us. How are we going to deal with them? Do we beat them up or tie them up and hang them on a tree? Sister Suruan is the best at doing these things. Forget it. With your cultivation you really can't do anything to them for a while. I'll be more straightforward and cripple these people's cultivation first, so that they won't think too much and cause trouble again. Xiaochen thought for a while, lifted his foot and walked over to Elder Sun and the others with a smirk. So, Hero Xiao, let's talk things out. Why do you always have to resort to violence? Elder Sun was almost scared to death. He had also suffered a lot in order to reach his current cultivation. When he heard that Xiaochen was going to cripple him, he felt that the whole sky was going to collapse. Chapter 1258. Family Head Yu also lowered his voice and said, That's right, great Hero Xiao, don't worry. We promise we won't do anything. Besides, although we aren't the most influential people in the inner martial arts world, we are still famous people. We don't have any grudges against your friends. No matter what, we won't do anything to them and ruin our own reputations. Yes, Xiao Xiao. Great Hero Xiao, we are only interested in the world of cultivators. We definitely won't make things difficult for your friends. Family Head Tang immediately nodded and added. After seeing Xiaochen send Sidu Qitian flying, they were very afraid of his strength. If Xiaochen didn't cause trouble for them, they would already be thanking the heavens and earth. How would they dare to take the initiative to provoke Cheng Menjiang and the others? Wouldn't that be the same as eating a bear's heart and a leopard's gall? Hiding at the back, Jiayuto's small face was deathly pale. He didn't even dare to let out a fart. He lowered his head and didn't make a sound. With his current strength, he couldn't even be considered as a bystander. If it weren't for the other two family heads insisting on staying, he would have already slipped away. Oh, alright, then I'll trust you this once. Only then did Xiaochen stop in his tracks. He swept his cold gaze across the crowd and suddenly unleashed a boundless aura. He warned them word by word, You'd better not act recklessly. Otherwise I'll definitely remove Awakening Heaven Gate, Tang Clan, and you clan from the pugilistic world. Their backs were drenched in cold sweat, and their legs were trembling like sifting chaff. They nodded with great difficulty. Seeing that his warning was effective, Xiaochen retracted his aura and turned around to say a few words to Cheng Menjiang and Jiamuzan. He also reminded Jia Tuyao and the other girls to pay attention to their safety. Then he took Xing Girl and mounted Bai Zhe, preparing to set off for Qitian sect. Bai Zhe took 2 steps forward, and before Elder Sun and the others could breathe a sigh of relief, Xiao Chen suddenly stopped. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and walked back to Elder Sun's side. Taking advantage of Elder Sun's moment of shock, Xiao Chen reached out and picked him up. Hanging him by the side of the spiritual beast, he calmly said, "Since you have nothing to do here, you might as well come with me. Let's go and be a witness for the new sect master of Awakening Heaven sect, Xing Gongzi." This is not appropriate. In fact, Hero Xiao only needs to go by yourself. Elder Sun was just about to refuse, but before he could finish his words, he felt his vision blur. A strong gust of wind blew past, and the surrounding flowers and trees instantly flew past him. At that moment, Elder Sun felt as if he was flying in the sky. He was so frightened that even his voice became distorted. His entire body stiffened as he stuck to the side of the bay's spiritual beast. He did not dare to move at all, afraid that he would accidentally fall and be smashed into meat paste. Under Xiao Chen's command, the bay's spiritual beast shuttled back and forth in the inner martial world at its fastest speed. Because it usually lived in the Venerable One's secret realm, the bay's spiritual beast was very curious about the outside world. It did not honestly hurry along its journey. Sometimes, it would suddenly burrow into the forest for a stroll, and when it came out, it would still be chewing on some unknown herbs. Sometimes, it would huff and puff as it climbed up a small hill, and then quickly rush down. It was having a great time. The bay's spiritual beast was playing happily, so Xiao Chen did not pay it too much attention. In any case, he was already used to this stupid spiritual beast's behavior. Instead, he heard Elder Sun's cries of surprise from time to time, which made him feel a little noisy. 4 hours passed, and the bay's spiritual beast gradually slowed down. Finally, it steadily stopped outside the open heaven gate. After estimating the time, Xiao Chen was shocked from the bottom of his heart. He did not think that using this fellow to replace the flying sword would actually save him a lot of time. Furthermore, this fellow was playing all over the place. It could be seen how fast it was running. However, the one who suffered the most was Elder Sunday. He had been hanging on the side of the spiritual beast the whole time, and his eyes, ears, nose, and throat were all filled with cold wind. At this moment, he only felt that his eyes were seeing stars, and even his hair was blowing backwards. His clothes were tattered and his body was covered with bruises. It was obvious that he had been hit quite hard on the road. Xiao Chen swung his arm and first threw Elder Sun to the side of the road. Then he supported little girl Xing and jumped off the horse's back. He rushed to Elder Sun and ordered, "Quickly, go and call all the disciples of the open heaven gate. First, come and see the new sect leader Xing Gongzi. Then bring me to find the Grand Elder and see where that old thing is hiding." Cow. Go and find them. Blarg. Elder Sun stood up in a daze and swayed back and forth a few steps on the side of the road. Before he could find the open heaven gate, he suddenly felt his stomach turn upside down. His legs went soft and he knelt on the side of the road and began to vomit. What a useless thing. I let you experience the speed of a high-level spiritual beast for free, but you still got carsick. No, you got carsick from the spiritual beast. You're still a venerable expert? You're simply trash. You really don't have a good life. Xiao Chen coldly ridiculed. Although this was the case, Xiao Chen could not do anything to Elder Sunday. He could only stand far away with little girl Xing and wait for this fellow to finish vomiting. Little girl Xing covered her nose in disgust and looked at Elder Sun with disdain. Then she took a step further away. It was obvious that she could not stand this disgusting smell and wanted to find a place to breathe. Who is it? How dare you behave so atrociously in the open heaven gate? Are you tired of living? Elder Sun's vomiting quickly attracted the attention of a group of patrolling guards. The leader of the guards walked over with large strides and a face full of vigilance. However, just as he finished asking, he felt that the person kneeling on the ground was a little familiar. After carefully looking at him, he realized that this person was wearing tattered clothes and had a body full of scars. He looked like a beggar. Wasn't this Elder Sun from his own sect? Son? Elder Sun? What's wrong with you? What happened? Do you want me to find a doctor for you? The leader of the guards asked in shock. No. There's no need. Go and gather all the disciples. I have an important matter to announce to everyone. Blarg. Elder Sun waved his hand and struggled to finish what he had to say. His stomach churned again and with a wuss sound he continued to vomit. Oh, all right, I'll go now. The leader of the guards frowned slightly. Although he felt that it was a little inappropriate for Elder Sun to vomit outside the sect's gate, he was only an ordinary disciple and did not dare to disobey the great elder's orders. He immediately turned around and ran towards the gate, preparing to enter the open heaven gate to call for help. Chapter 1259. After a while, all the disciples and elders of Awakening Heaven sect had gathered at the square. Everyone was in groups and discussing in low voices. They were very confused about the current situation. After all, the sect had never gathered everyone together in the past. Could it be that something big had happened? Seeing that everyone in the sect had gathered, Elder Sun, who was squatting at the side, hurriedly circulated his demonic chi and forcefully suppressed the restlessness in his stomach. He stood up and staggered to the front of everyone. He took a few deep breaths and tried to calm his emotions. Xiao Qin and Xing Las naturally followed him. The former looked relaxed and carefree, but the latter looked a little nervous and her heart was a little perturbed. After all, she was about to be promoted from an ordinary disciple to the sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect. She was still a little uncomfortable and didn't know how to face the upcoming situation. Xiao Qin looked back at Xing Las and smiled. He rubbed her head, indicating that he was here and there was no need to be afraid. Disciples of Awakening Heaven sect, listen up. Elder Sun took a deep breath and announced loudly, because sect leader Situ has entered the immortal cultivation world to train in seclusion, he may not return in a short period of time. Therefore, before entering the immortal cultivation world, he has already officially passed the position of sect leader to Xing Gongzi. From today onwards, Xing Gongzi will be in charge of all the affairs of Awakening Heaven sect. No way, isn't sect leader Situ's decision a little too casual? How can the dignified position of Awakening Heaven sect's sect leader be passed to an ordinary disciple like Xing Gongzi? That's right. Whether it is experience or strength, this old man far surpasses Xing Gongzi. If she is really going to be the sect leader, this old man will be the first to refuse. I also refuse. In the past, I have contributed so much to Awakening Heaven sect. Why didn't the sect remember it and let this little lass be the sect leader? I want the sect to have a fair election. Start over. That's right. Who would be willing to work for a little lass who is still wet behind her ears? It's more like she is my wife. If she becomes the sect leader, I think Awakening Heaven sect will be finished. You are almost a year older than her and you still have the nerve to ask her to be your wife? Let me do it. Just as Elder Sun finished his announcement, the disciples and elders of the Awakening Heaven sect all exploded in anger. One after another they raised all kinds of objections. The entire square was a boiling cauldron of voices and resentment. Almost no one agreed to let little girl Xing become the sect master. There were even people who jumped out and directly challenged little Miss Xing. They wanted to have a one-on-one duel with her. Whoever won would become the next sect leader. Just as the disciples were about to start an internal strife, a few flashes of blue lightning suddenly lit up. Without giving anyone time to react, they immediately flew into the crowd of disciples and struck the loudest ones. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, Several extremely miserable screams came from the crowd. Those who were struck by the lightning had no ability to resist and directly fell to the ground, twitching all over and foaming at the mouth. The other disciples who were temporarily safe and sound immediately retreated, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. In an instant, a few empty spaces appeared in the square. In the middle of the spaces were the disciples who were struck by the lightning. The remaining people watched helplessly as their screams turned into silence. Not long after, they were charred black by the lightning and curled up motionlessly. They could not be more dead. Is there anyone else who is unconvinced or wants to fight one-on-one? As your sect master Xing's personal bodyguard, I will accompany you to the end. Just as the disciples were stunned by the scene in front of them, a low and intimidating voice suddenly rang out. Everyone turned their heads in unison and saw Xiao Qin holding 2 balls of lightning in his hands. He stared at them expressionlessly. Seeing that everyone's attention had been attracted, Xiao Qin circulated his yuan qi and released a powerful pressure from his body, spreading it out towards the crowd in front of him. Before the Awakening Heaven sect disciples could tell what strength Xiao Qin had, they suddenly felt a strong sense of suffocation. It was as if a huge hand was gripping their necks or their chests were heavily smashed by a boulder. They saw stars and could not breathe. Looking at the 2 crackling balls of lightning in Xiao Qin's hands and feeling the unparalleled pressure, some of the weaker disciples quickly could not hold on. Their faces turned pale, their legs went limp, and they directly collapsed to the ground. As for the other disciples who had already broken through to the martial venerable realm, they were also struggling. They clenched their fists tightly as they bitterly endured the pressure released by Xiao Qin. They did not dare to slack off in the slightest, afraid that they would fall to the ground in embarrassment like the low-level disciples if they were not careful. All the disciples had a question in their hearts. Who was this guy? Although they could not see his strength, the pressure he released was even more powerful than their sect leader Sidhu Chitian. It was simply too heaven-defying. Just as the disciples were feeling anxious and trying to figure out what to do, Xiaoqian looked around and felt that he had more or less established his might. He still had to pass the authority to Xing Biki, so he withdrew the lightning ball in his hand and the pressure that had spread out. The Awakening Heaven sect disciples all heaved a sigh of relief. Those who were lying on the ground could finally get up, but they still did not dare to dust off their bodies. They could only stand there with their heads lowered. Now, who else has any objections? Anyone who wants to challenge me? Xiaoqian waited for a while and seeing that no one spoke, he said in a deep voice, "Since none of you have any objections, then be a little more obedient for this young master. Listen carefully to sect leader Xing's instructions for the next mission. Whoever dares to be impudent and disrespectful to sect leader Xing will end up like these charred corpses on the ground." The entire plaza was silent. After hearing Xiaoqian's warning, not a single Awakening Heaven sect disciple dared to act recklessly. They all stood in place obediently and did not make a sound. No matter what, strength was the best right to speak. Moreover, the corpses on the ground were too ghastly. Just a glance at them would cause people to feel fear for no reason. "Xiaoqian, thank you." Xing girl looked gratefully at Xiaoqian and said softly. Although little chick Xing had always felt that Xiaoqian had a glib tongue and wasn't a proper person, when she encountered trouble, he would be the first to step forward and block in front of her, blocking those messy matters. This made little chick Xing's impression of him immediately increase by a lot. Xiaoqian shook his head slightly, then raised his chin and pointed at the Awakening Heaven sect disciples in front of him, who did not even dare to breathe loudly. He indicated that Xing girl did not need to take it to heart and that they should first deal with the people in front of them. Chapter 1260. Little girl Xing furrowed her brows and thought for a while. She didn't know what to say and softly asked for help. "Xiaoqian, what should I do next? I've never been a sect leader before, so I don't have much experience. Furthermore, many of the people here are more experienced than I am. I don't know how to give them orders." "Oh, it's very simple." Xiaoqian shrugged his shoulders and replied in a low voice, "You just need to let them search the entire Qitian sect and see if there's a secret room suitable for closed-door cultivation. That way we can find that Grand Elder." Xiaoqian wasn't too interested in managing Qitian sect. His current goal was to support little girl Xing and let her successfully become the sect leader. This would remove the threat that Qitian sect posed to him and the people around him. Then he would get rid of that malignant Grand Elder. "I'm all right." Little girl Xing nodded her head and took a deep breath. She took 2 steps forward and swept her gaze across everyone present. She cleared her throat and pretended to be dignified as she loudly said, "Everyone, there's no need to be too nervous. As long as you obediently listen to my orders, I will naturally not punish any of you. Now, I will pass on my first order to all of you." Little girl Xing's crisp voice reverberated throughout the plaza. Although the disciples who had their heads lowered felt that it was strange for her to call herself the sect leader, they didn't dare to say anything. There was still a demon glaring at them like a tiger watching its prey. "Next, you will search the entire sect in detail. Look for any secret passageways or seclusion points. If you find anything suspicious, or if you discover any traces of strangers, report to me as soon as possible." Little Miss Xing waved her hand and gave the order to search the sect. After everyone heard this, they were slightly stunned. They looked at each other in dismay and didn't know where to start. Besides, wasn't this a little too strange? Why did the new sect leader want them to search for these strange things? Logically, shouldn't the sect leader know everything that happened in the sect like the back of his hand? Could it be that there was something fishy about this? After a short moment of silence, the group of disciples had already split up. Some of the more quick-witted ones had already loudly received their orders and obediently turned around to carry out Xing Zhao's orders. At this time, they already understood that Xing Gongzi would have the final say in Qitian Gate from now on. After all, she had such a powerful backer by her side. She could send people on their way at any time. What capital did they have to resist? If he followed through and found what Xing Gongzi needed, he might even have a chance to advance or obtain more cultivation resources. As for some of the more inflexible disciples, they were still standing in the square, hesitating. They didn't know whether they should obey or question. "What's wrong with you guys? Why are you still in a daze?" Are you waiting for sect leader Xing to give you a red packet? Xiao Chen glared at them and said coldly, "Why are you still here? Hurry up and get to work. If you don't find what sect leader Xing needs before the sky turns dark, then wait for someone to collect your corpses." Yes, yes. The disciples who were originally in a dilemma suddenly quivered. They thought of Xiao Chen's demonic methods and naturally didn't dare to be negligent. They were so scared that they scattered like birds and beasts, one after another, ran towards the various rooms in the sect. As Qitian Gate was the #1 sect of the inner martial world's demonic cultivators, not only did it occupy a vast area, it also had hundreds of houses. They were located in different places and were surrounded by green mountains and green water. It made people feel relaxed and happy. Even though the environment was very beautiful, if one wanted to find something, it would make people scratch their heads. There were many Awakening Heaven sect disciples, all of them spread out to search, but it still took them close to 4 hours to search the entire sect. After searching one round, the disciples found nothing. Apart from a few secret rooms that stored heavenly treasures, they didn't find any other secluded places, let alone any strangers. Have you all checked clearly? Are you sure you didn't miss anything? After listening to the last disciple's report, little girl Xing couldn't help but frown. Could it be that the Grand Elder knew that Xiao Chen was going to find trouble with him, so he ran away in advance? Replying to sect leader Xing, the disciples have already searched the sect many times. There really isn't any other abnormal place. An elder bowed with a bitter face and carefully reported. Hero Xiao, what do you think next? Elder Sun finally calmed down and stood to the side with an awkward expression. After all, they couldn't find any traces of the Grand Elder. Xiao Chen definitely wouldn't let this matter rest. He could only carefully ask for the opinion of this fiend. However, before Elder Sun could finish speaking, Xiao Chen waved his hand impatiently and interrupted him. Then he glared at him and said, "The one with the surname Sun, are you not taking Sect Master Xing seriously? He is the true sect leader of your sect. Why the hell are you asking me?" Elder Sun jumped in fright. Only now did he realize that his actions were a bit inappropriate. After all, little girl Xing was only a low-level disciple that ran errands for him. Now that she had suddenly become his direct superior, it was a bit hard to switch roles. Really, you don't even have the slightest bit of eyesight. Don't tell me you gave your chrysanthemum to Sidu Qitian in exchange for this position? Xiao Chen snorted and coldly mocked. Pfft. As soon as Xiao Chen finished speaking, many of the disciples in the plaza couldn't help but laugh. Normally they had all been bullied by Elder Sunday. Now that they saw him being humiliated in front of Xiao Chen, their moods immediately became much better. Their original fear also gradually dissipated. Although Elder Sun was so angry that his lungs were about to explode, he didn't dare to act rashly. He could only forcefully suppress the anger in his heart. Turning his head, he respectfully bowed to little girl Xing and asked, "Sect leader Xing, what do you think we should do next? How about this? I think these disciples didn't search carefully enough. Why don't we just let them search again?" Elder Sun naturally knew that the people below him were laughing at him. Although he couldn't punish them in front of everyone, he could choose to use another method to teach these disciples a lesson. Small things, I can't beat Xiao Chen, but do you think I can't deal with you guys? The disciples who were already dissatisfied with Elder Sun had their eyes blazing with anger when they heard these words. They wanted nothing more than to slap Elder Sun to death. Wasn't he clearly trying to torment them? What AF * king piece of trash. Xiao Chen, how about, we do as Elder Sun said and let everyone search carefully again? Little girl Xing didn't have any ideas of her own and turned to Xiao Chen for help. Chapter 1261. Little chick Xing still hadn't gotten used to her identity as the sect leader. She was also clueless about how to deal with the following tasks. Her mind was blank and she couldn't think of any other way. Oh, forget it. There's no need for that. I'll try other methods. I should be able to find that old bastard's hiding place. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and directly released his divine sense to cover the entire Qitian sect. He carefully checked every place. Xiao Chen could also see that the disciples of Qitian sect were somewhat resentful. However, their main target was Elder Sun, so he didn't intend to be too ruthless. After all, little chick Xing still had to be in charge of this sect in the future. It wouldn't do to be unpopular. It was better to let those disciples secretly hate Elder Sun in their hearts. However, when Xiao Chen said this, Elder Sun immediately gritted his teeth in anger. Just now, when he asked Xiao Chen for instructions, this guy insisted that he ask little chick Xing. Now that he turned around, little Chick Xing went to ask Xiao Qian. This was simply an unnecessary move. Maybe Xiao Qian just wanted to take the opportunity to humiliate him. Although he was angry, elder son could only bear with it. Who asked him to be weak and his skills inferior to others? Elder son secretly swore that for now, he would temporarily act according to Xiao Qian and little Chick Xing's mood. When Sidu Qitian achieved great success in the immortal cultivation world and returned with glory, he would settle the score with these two people. So you're hiding there. It's really a good place. No wonder no one can find you. Just as elder son's thoughts were running wild, Xiao Qian suddenly laughed coldly and muttered to himself. It turned out that Xiao Qian had already found the location of the Grand Elder. Just now, when he extended his divine sense into Sidu Qitian's room, he finally found a secret seclusion spot behind the bookcase. Moreover, the hidden door behind the bookcase was equipped with a very complicated electronic password lock. Now, it made sense that those disciples couldn't find the secret room. They probably didn't dare to casually enter the sect master's room. Even if they did, they definitely wouldn't dare to mess around due to Sidu Qitian's remaining prestige, which was why they returned empty-handed. Xiao Qian's spiritual awareness swept again and confirmed that there was really an old man sitting in the seclusion spot. He was not in a hurry and stood in the same place and stretched his waist. Xiao Qian, have you found it? Where is he? When little Miss Xing heard Xiao Qian's words, her face lit up with joy. She anxiously asked, "Do you want me to send a disciple to find him? Or should we go and find him directly?" "There's no need to go through all that trouble." Xiao Qian waved his hand, then turned in another direction and suddenly shouted in a loud voice, "Grand Elder, listen up. Sidu Qitian, that old fellow, has already been played to death by me. Stop hiding and quickly get out of your seclusion. Otherwise, this young master will immediately burn the awakening heaven gate to ashes." Boom! Just as Xiao Qian's voice fell, a loud sound suddenly came from Sidu Qitian's room. Then a black figure broke through the window and shot towards Xiao Qian's direction. When it reached Xiao Qian, the black figure turned 2.5 times in the air before landing in front of Xiao Qian. The face was old and the hair was white. It was the old man that Xiao Qian's spiritual awareness had detected previously. It was the Grand Elder who controlled Sidu Qitian like a puppet. "The one shouting outside just now was you, kid?" The Grand Elder was dressed in black, and there was no extra expression on his face. His cold eyes swept over Xiao Qian and the others, then stopped on Elder Son for a while. He opened his mouth and asked in a hoarse voice, "Little son, what happened here? Sidu Qitian was really killed by this kid?" You are..." Elder Son was stunned. He suddenly realized that the old man in front of him had a familiar feeling. After carefully looking at the old man's face, Elder Son exclaimed in surprise, "Master Gong Sun Yen, is it really you? How is this possible? Back then you left without saying goodbye. I thought you were already..." It turned out that this old man was called Gong Sun Yen. He was the master who taught Elder Son back then. In the past, when Gong Sun Yen was training in the secular world, he met Elder Son by chance. At that time, Elder Son was still a child who was bullied by everyone. When Gong Sun Yen found him, he was being beaten up by a group of older children. The bored Gong Sun Yen stood at the side and observed for a while. He found that although this kid was beaten black and blue, his muscles and bones were soft and good at avoiding fatal injuries. His heart moved and he saved him. After chatting with him for a while, Gong Sun Yen found that his comprehension was good and could be considered a cultivation talent. Gong Sun Yen brought him back to Open Heaven Gate and carefully taught him. He also took one of the Sun characters from the compound surname Gong Sun as Elder Son's new name. However, not long after, when Elder Son's cultivation had finally reached a small level, Gong Sun Yen suddenly disappeared. From then on, he never appeared in the inner martial arts world again. It was as if he had disappeared from the world. In order to find his master, Elder Son spent a year searching everywhere for his whereabouts. However, he did not get any results. Any information about this person was like a stone thrown into the sea. There was no response. Elder Son thought that Gong Sun Yen had already left the inner martial arts world, or that he had met with misfortune. He felt sad for a while because of this. He did not expect that Gong Sun Yen would suddenly appear in front of him today. He could not help but feel excited. "If you want to reminisce, let's talk about the past later." Gong Sun Yen interrupted Elder Son's surprised and happy words. He stared coldly at Xiao Qian and a trace of haze flashed in his eyes. He asked Elder Son, "Tell me first what happened to this kid. Was he the one who killed Sidu Qitian? Why are you staying with him?" Previously, Gong Sun Yen had been cultivating in the seclusion spot. Suddenly he had a faint feeling that he was being watched. He was just about to find Sidu Qitian and ask him what was going on when he heard Xiao Chen's shout outside. He was shocked and angry. He immediately got up and rushed out. Before elder son could continue, Xiao Chen pushed him to the side and stood up. He crossed his arms and said carelessly, "You old thing, you hid yourself pretty well. If it wasn't for me, you guys wouldn't have been able to find you." "You killed Sidu Qitian?" Gong Sun Yen narrowed his eyes. He could not sense the strength of Xiao Chen. He was a little confused, so he asked again to confirm. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth twitched. He said slowly, "I might as well tell you the truth. That idiot Sidu Qitian was indeed killed by this young master. If you don't want to die like him, then quickly destroy your own cultivation to show your sincerity. Otherwise I will beat you up into a pig's head. You won't be able to embarrass yourself in front of your disciple." Chapter 1262. Ah! What an arrogant brat. Gong Sun Yen laughed instead of getting angry. He looked at Xiao Chen with disdain and said, "You merely got rid of that bastard Situ Wuji. How dare you act so presumptuously in front of me? You're simply courting death." Before he finished speaking, Gong Sun Yan's body shook and he instantly revealed his martial venerable perfection realm cultivation. He leaped into the air and swooped down towards Xiao Chen. He ruthlessly struck out with his palm, clearly intending to kill Xiao Chen on the spot. A thick demonic energy mixed with the whistling sound of the air breaking approached. Xiao Chen's eyes narrowed and he quickly determined Gong Sun Yan's strength. This old thing was indeed not simple. Although he looked like he was only at the martial venerable perfection realm, in reality he was already on the verge of breaking through. It was no wonder that Sidu Qitian was far from being his match. "Old bastard, I think you've been in seclusion for too long. Your thinking has long become outdated." Xiao Chen sneered and looked at the approaching Gong Sun Yen mockingly. "Now that the entire inner martial world is under my control, why wouldn't I dare to be presumptuous? You'd better go back and be a coward. Don't come out and find trouble for yourself." Faced with Gong Sun Yan's attack, Xiao Chen had no intention of dodging. After he finished speaking, he even had the time to let out a long yawn. Then he casually struck out with his palm to meet Gong Sun Yan's palm. Bang! In the blink of an eye, both of their palms collided. Miss Xing stood at the side with an anxious expression. Her hands were twisted like fried dough twists, and her heart was in her throat. She could clearly feel that Gong Sun Yan's strength had definitely surpassed Sidu Qitian's by too much. It might even be more than the martial venerable perfection realm. Thus, she was worried about Xiao Chen's reckless action. However, after the two of them landed on the ground, Miss Xing suddenly discovered that Gong Sun Yan's face had turned deathly pale and he was panting heavily. On the other hand, Xiao Chen had his arms crossed and a smile on his face as if nothing had happened. He was even humming a little tune, looking very relaxed. With this comparison, little girl Xing knew that Gong Sun Yen was definitely not Xiao Chen's match. Her heart finally calmed down and her expression relaxed quite a bit. "Master, how are you feeling?" Elder Sun also saw the clues and quickly ran over. He carefully supported Gong Sun Yen and stared at Xiao Chen vigilantly. He was afraid that Xiao Chen would take advantage of Gong Sun Yan's injury to launch a sneak attack. "The one with the surname Sun, isn't your master's strength a little too weak?" Xiao Chen whistled and casually teased, "Master Xiao, I haven't even used my full strength yet, but he's already panting like a bull. What kind of grand supreme elder of the #1 evil sect in Wulin? Is that a lie? He's simply a piece of trash." Although that was what Xiao Chen said, he thought to himself that it was a close shave. If he had not been brought there by the Bey's spiritual beast and suffered the lightning tribulation, thereby benefiting from the misfortune and breaking through, he would have had to put in a lot more effort to deal with the Grand Supreme Elder. Xiao Chen. "Master Xiao, as the saying goes, one should be lenient wherever possible. Since you've already taken advantage of me today and Qi Tian sect has already made Xing Gongzi the sect leader, can you let my master live?" Elder Sun had no choice but to lower his voice and say, "I promise to take him away immediately and never step foot into Qi Tian sect again." Elder Sun also knew that the situation was already hopeless. Even Gong Sun Yen, whom he had infinite respect for, was not a match for Xiao Chen. There was no point in staying here any longer. "Bastard." When Gong Sun Yen heard Elder Sun's words, he immediately broke free from Elder Sun's supporting arm, stretched out his hand and directly slapped Elder Sunday. He angrily scolded, "Open Heaven sect relied on this old man's hard work to achieve today's achievements with great difficulty. But you, with just a few words, you want to hand it over to others? This old man will definitely not leave. If you want to leave, then leave by yourself. But master, right now we are not a match for Xiao Chen. Staying here. Elder son still wanted to say a few more words, but Xiao Chen was too lazy to listen to their conversation. Without waiting for him to finish, he directly interrupted, "Enough, the two of you stop acting. If you want to live, honestly answer a few of my questions. If the answers satisfy me, this young master can consider sparing 1-2 lives." Xiao Chen still wanted to use Gong Sun Yen to find out more about the cultivation world. Naturally, he would not easily kill him. Apart from this old thing should have some other value. After all, little girl Xing had just become the sect leader and there were many things that she was still clueless about. She had to let Elder Sun and Gong Sun Yen help her sort things out. Wishful thinking. Gong Sun Yen immediately straightened his back and put on an inviolable expression. He said in a serious tone, "Little brat, this old man admits that my strength is not as high as yours. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Don't think that you can get any benefits from this old man. Let me tell you, this old man is also a person who has seen wind and waves." Gong Sun Yen still wanted to put on a brave front and display his unyielding spirit. However, halfway through his words he felt his vision blur. Then he suddenly received a slap to the face. The slap made him dizzy and see stars. Before Gong Sun Yen could even react, he was once again kicked away by Xiao Chen. His whole body fell backwards and landed on the ground like a wild goose falling on the sand. Then he was immediately pressed down by Mount Tai. He was hit so hard that he almost died. Seeing that Gong Sun Yen hadn't even finished speaking before he was beaten up by Xiao Chen without any ability to resist, Elder Sun was scared silly. After a long time, his body trembled and he recovered. He hurriedly ran over but didn't dare to pull Gong Sun Yen away. He could only beg politely, "Hero Xiao, please don't hit me. Let's talk this out." Xiao Chen heavily punched Gong Sun Yan's stomach again. Then he stood up and sneered, "You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. If you said that earlier, you wouldn't have to suffer this beating." Gong Sun Yan's eyes rolled back and he lay on the ground, speechless for a long time. Xiao Chen's beating had made him lose all his temper. Now he was as obedient as a rabbit. Seeing that he had finally beaten Gong Sun Yen into submission, Xiao Chen stared at him condescendingly and asked, "Let me ask you, what is the plan to enter the world of cultivators? And where are the Hong and Song families of the internal Wulin? I heard that they have set up a world of cultivators sacrifice. What is that for? Tell me everything you know. If you hide anything, you know what will happen to you." Cough, cough, cough. Gong Sun Yen coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood and struggled to get up. He also knew that if he didn't answer Xiao Chen's questions today, it would probably not end well. Chapter 1263. In desperation, Gong Sun Yen endured the pain in his body and said, "Originally, the world of cultivators was only a rumor in the martial arts world. But later, someone accidentally found a way to enter the world of cultivators and rushed in. That person's strength was originally outstanding, and after a few years he became even more powerful. He was invincible, so everyone yearned for that place." Gong Sun Yen honestly explained the matter of the world of cultivators. After listening, Xiao Chen nodded. He naturally knew that the person Gong Sun Yen was talking about was the supreme sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect, Situ Haotian. As for the other information about the world of cultivators, Gong Sun Yen and Elder Sun had more or less the same. It was nothing more than the fact that he wanted to obtain the cultivation resources of the world of cultivators and improve his strength. But Situ Haotian had set up many obstacles and obstructions, and his strength was far greater than Gong Sun Yan's. He had no other choice but to hide his strength and bide his time. He planned to sneak into the world of cultivators when the time was right. As for the Hong and Song families, Gong Sun Yen pondered for a while and continued, "Both of them are relatively secretive clans. They don't have much contact with the outside world. Ordinary people in the martial arts world may not know of the existence of these two clans." Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows. No wonder not only Tang Qianling didn't know anything, but even the cultivators on the Venerable Realms Pier didn't know of the existence of the Hong and Song families. However, although their clans are relatively small and are far inferior to the three great clans in Awakening Heaven sect, they have an extremely mysterious cultivation method. Moreover, the venerable experts that they cultivate are several times stronger than other venerable experts of the same level. Gong Sun Yen sighed and said helplessly. Even he himself couldn't understand why the Hong and Song families were so powerful. They were all venerable experts, so why were the people of the Hong and Song families so powerful? If it weren't for another group of people restraining the Hong and Song families, as well as the development of the small clans that had submitted to them, and if it weren't for the fact that these people were so low-key, the people who ruled the martial arts world might have already changed hands. Oh, it's just a little stronger. It's no big deal. Xiao Qin shrugged, skipped this topic and asked, "You'd better talk about the sacrificial ceremony in the cultivation world. You should know about it, right? Do you know what they used as sacrifices?" Since the members of the Hong and Song families were cultivators, it was normal for them to be stronger than ordinary cultivators. Xiao Qin himself was originally like this, so he didn't take it to heart. What he was most concerned about now was the issue of the sacrifice. After all, the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect are very mysterious. Most of the knowledge about them in the martial arts world is limited to rumors. No sect or family dares to provoke them. Of course, they are usually more restrained and won't meddle in the affairs of other sections. Gong Sun Yin shook his head. Obviously, he knew very little about the two sections. What immortal cultivation sect? Ghost cultivation sect? They were just talking about the Hong family and the Song family. Why did they suddenly bring up two random sects? Are you trying to fool me, or have you become stupid after being beaten by me just now? Do you want me to help you straighten it out again? Suddenly hearing these two unfamiliar terms, Xiao Qin immediately frowned. He clenched his fist and waved it in front of Gong Sun Yin, asking unhappily, "So you don't know?" Gong Sun Yin was stunned and asked subconsciously, "What? If I don't know, are you going to make up a story?" Xiao Qin stared at Gong Sun Yan's expression and asked coldly, No. Let me first describe the situation of these two sects to you." Gong Sun Yin hurriedly waved his hand, stopping Xiao Qin's further action, and then explained, "In the martial arts world, most of the sects belong to the martial cultivation sect and the devil cultivation sect. There are sects and families, but the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect are exceptions. They are neither martial cultivation sect nor devil cultivation sect, but they have other cultivation methods." "You mean the Hong family and the Song family belong to the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect respectively?" Xiao Qin's eyes narrowed. It shouldn't be. The names of these two sects sounded a little confrontational, but the last time he saw in the Venerable Secret Realm, the relationship between these two families seemed to be quite good. "No, the Hong family and the Song family belong to the immortal cultivation sect. This sect is formed by some unknown small families in the martial arts world, and these two families are the leaders of this sect." Gong Sun Yin paused for a moment and then continued, "As for the ghost cultivation sect, it is formed by some evil cultivators. Their leader is called Shishan Giant Bull, and he is an extremely powerful expert." Shishan Giant Bull? Xiao Qin was shocked. His first guild mission in Songning City was to kill an evil cultivator, and his master who came to seek revenge was a guy called Shishan Old Devil. Later, Xiao Qin encountered evil cultivators with names starting with Shishan one after another. At that time he speculated that these people might belong to the same sect. He didn't expect to hear this name again today. It seemed that this ghost cultivation sect was their base camp. Yes, Shishan Giant Bull is the most powerful existence in the ghost cultivation sect. Gong Sun Yin naturally didn't know what Xiao Qin was thinking in his heart. He nodded and said, "Both the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect have their own unique cultivation methods, so their strength is much higher than that of ordinary martial cultivators and evil cultivators. However, these two sects have different ideologies, so they often fight with each other, which consumes a lot of energy." "What the hell, I didn't expect the martial arts world to be so deep," Xiao Qin murmured. "However, it's also fortunate that this is the case. If it weren't for the fact that they were fighting each other so fiercely, the inner martial world would have fallen into their hands long ago with their profound strength." Gong Sun Yin sighed and lamented. "Since they are so powerful, haven't you sects ever considered forming a group to destroy them? I remember that you martial cultivators and evil cultivators have always been very disgusted with evil cultivators, right?" Xiao Qin raised his eyebrows and asked lightly. However, Xiao Qin immediately figured it out. Based on the temperament of these people, they must have tried something similar. However, from the looks of it now, the result was bound to end in failure. After all, ordinary cultivators and cultivators were not on the same level. There was no comparison at all. Even if a group of ordinary cultivators went there, they wouldn't be able to pose any threat to cultivators. Sure enough, Gong Sun Yin smiled helplessly and said, "Why not? Back then, Master Sidhu Haokong gathered all the sects of the devil cultivation sect in the martial arts world and wanted to wipe out the ghost cultivation sect in one fell swoop. In the end, when they just arrived at the enemy's territory before they had time to set up camp, they killed most of their people. Even he himself was seriously injured. Chapter 1264. Is that true? Then what happened to him? As Xiao Chen asked, he was secretly shocked. Could it be that there were cultivators among those evil cultivators? If Gong Sunyan wasn't lying, then there would be big trouble. It should be known that ordinary cultivators were no match for evil cultivators of the same level. After all, evil cultivators' cultivation methods were cruel and tyrannical. The evil techniques they used were also strange and unpredictable. Their explosive strength was much higher than that of ordinary cultivators. If there were cultivators among them, then it meant that there was basically no one who could resist them. If this continued, the consequences would be unimaginable. Later on, Situ Haoyan recovered from his injuries with great difficulty. He felt that this battle was an unforgettable shame, so he decided to take a risk and go to the world of cultivators. He wanted to see if he could obtain more strength. Gong Sunyan's voice was somewhat low. It was obvious that he didn't want to recall this part of the past. Oh, I heard that he came back later, right? Then did he have another showdown with the ghost cultivation sect? Xiao Chen asked as he rubbed his chin. Gong Sunyan curled his lips and answered reluctantly, about 20 years ago, Situ Haoyan came back once. He thought that he had obtained strength in the world of cultivators and could easily defeat Shishan Giant Ox. However, after he came to challenge them, apart from killing a few low-level evil cultivators, he could only fight to a draw with Shishan Giant Ox. He was helpless and could only return empty-handed. So he was ashamed and couldn't face the people of your sect, so he chose to leave? Xiao Chen asked with great interest. Who knows what he was thinking? Gong Sunyan suddenly flew into a rage. He gritted his teeth and said, he didn't tell us the reason and just ran away. I don't know if he died of guilt or if he took his concubine to live in seclusion in the world of cultivators and live happily ever after. At the mention of Situ Haoyan's name, Gong Sunyan had a belly full of anger. This guy had obtained strength, but he didn't allow others to enter the world of cultivators to advance. He even set those strange rules. Gong Sunyan didn't know if he was crazy, but it made Gong Sunyan very unhappy. Hearing Gong Sunyan's words, Xiao Chen's face became a bit gloomy. He didn't care whether Situ Haoyan could defeat the giant ox or not, but Gong Sunyan actually insulted his mother, saying that she was Situ Haoyan's concubine. Xiao Chen hated people who talked about his parents the most in his life. Fortunately, elder son, who was standing to the side, had sharp eyes. He noticed that Xiao Chen's expression had become very unsightly. After pondering for a moment, he understood the reason. He hurriedly whispered a few words into Gong Sunyan's ear. Master, the hero Xiao Chen is Xiao Feng's biological son. He is also the son of the woman that Situ Haoyan has a crush on. Ah. Gong Sunyan was stunned for a moment. He felt a gust of cold wind blowing over and his whole body shivered. His back suddenly became cold. He touched it with his hand and found that his back was completely soaked with sweat. Gong Sunyan felt a strong sense of danger when he saw Xiao Chen staring at him coldly. He hurriedly said apologetically, "Little friend Xiao, about that, we're all working hard to enter the cultivation world. I'm very sorry about what happened to your parents, but this was all Situ Haoyan's despicable actions. I'm only his subordinate. You can't blame it all on me, right?" "Oh, according to what you said, this matter should be blamed on me and my parents being unlucky?" Xiao Chen laughed coldly and said, "You can only blame my mother for being too careless, catching the eye of that foolish old sect master of yours. You can only blame my father for being too careless, getting captured by the current sect master for no reason. You can only blame me for being too careless, getting targeted by you. You have no choice but to chase me down and kill me, right?" "No, I didn't." Gong Sunyan was dumbfounded. He just wanted to shirk his responsibility. Why did he feel that something was wrong when he listened to Xiao Chen's words? "I think you are itching for a beating. You want me to beat you up to loosen your muscles and bones. Only then will you come to your senses." Xiao Chen thought that his parents might all be suffering, and his heart became more and more upset. He looked at Gong Sunyan in front of him and felt even more disgusted. He could not help but clench his fists and take 2 steps forward. He knocked Gong Sunyan down with 1 punch and then pounced on him. "Ouch, it hurts? Master Xiao, please don't hit me. I don't mean to blame your parents. It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding." Gong Sunyan had no time to dodge. He could only passively defend against the punches and kicks that fell on him like raindrops. He secretly cursed his bad luck. Although Xiao Chen only used ordinary punches and kicks, when they hit Gong Sun Yan's body, Gong Sun Yan felt unbearable pain. No matter how hard he tried to defend, it was useless. If he had not tried his best to protect a few vital parts of his body, he might have been beaten into a cripple. Naturally, Xiao Chen did not care about Gong Sun Yan's screams. He continued to beat Gong Sun Yan to vent the long-suppressed resentment and anger in his heart. After beating Gong Sun Yan for half an hour, Xiao Chen's anger finally dissipated. He stopped and looked at Gong Sun Yan condescendingly. He said coldly, "In order to enter the world of cultivators, you tried everything you could. This is not a big deal. But you actually took my father away and sent people to deal with me. This is your fault." "Hee, great hero Xiao, you can't say that. I didn't actually want to harm you after that. I just ordered people to protect you." Gong Sun Yan struggled to get up and said with a smile, his face bruised and swollen, "Old fart, you still have the nerve to say that? If it weren't for this young hero's intelligence and strength, I would have been killed by you a long time ago. Even the grass on my grave is taller than me now." Xiao Chen glared at him fiercely and said angrily, Yes. Master Xiao is very lucky. How could you die so easily?" Gong Sun Yan did not dare to refute. He could only put on a bitter face and smile apologetically. He also secretly glared at Elder Sunday. The meaning of this glare was obvious. Gong Sun Yan was reprimanding Elder Sunday. "Why didn't you explain the situation earlier? You made me get beaten up again for nothing. And I don't even have a place to reason with. You are really too blind." Feeling the anger and resentment in Gong Sun Yan's eyes, Elder Sun felt a little helpless. "Master, who told you to speak nonsense? You should at least wait for me to finish introducing Xiao Chen's identity. Once you know the ins and outs of the situation, it won't be too late for you to explain yourself. Alright, don't talk about these useless things." Xiao Chen waved his hand impatiently and said, "I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you now. Immediately go and arrange for the person in charge of the Immortal Cultivator sect and the Ghost Cultivator sect to come here. I want to ask them personally what method is needed to allow people to enter the world of cultivators safely." Chapter 1265. Xiao Chen had already thought it through. Since Gong Sun Yan had some understanding of these two sects, he might as well let him run errands for them. There was no need for Xiao Chen to ask around and save a lot of time. Hero Xiao, you may not know much about the Immortal Cultivation sects and the Ghost Cultivation sects." When Gong Sun Yan heard this order, he immediately revealed a difficult expression. He hesitantly said, "They've always been arrogant and looked down on the other martial arts and demonic cultivators in the martial arts world. Even if I invite them, I'm afraid they won't listen to me." This request was really difficult for Gong Sun Yan. After all, the Immortal Cultivation sects and the Ghost Cultivation sects were very arrogant. Even if Situ Haoyan personally invited them, they might not be willing to come. "I don't care about this, you think of a way yourself." Xiao Chen casually waved his hand and glanced at Gong Sun Yan. "I'll give you 1 day. If you can't find them in 1 day, then I'll take your dog life. There's no point in keeping you alive anyway, what do you think?" After saying that, Xiao Chen shook his fist in front of Gong Sun Yan. Then he turned around and whispered a few words to Miss Xing afterward. He mounted the Bay's spirit beast and sped towards the teleportation formation. Since there was nothing else for him to do here, and Qing Minjing and the others were still guarding the array, Xiao Chen planned to bring the girls into Awakening Heaven Gate and settle them down. Jia Muzhen had also been out for a long time, so he should go back to take care of his family's affairs. He couldn't stay outside for a long time with Xiao Chen. Seeing Xiao Chen disappear into the horizon, Gong Sun Yan and Elder Sun looked at each other in dismay. They were very depressed. Xiao Chen had given them a difficult problem. How could he invite those two secluded sects to come out in such a short time? Gong Sun Yan and Elder Sun did not dare to escape. Firstly, they had nowhere to go. Secondly, there were too many people in the martial arts world who hated Awakening Heaven Gate. Once they left, they would probably be chased by their enemies endlessly. The two of them first asked little Miss Xing to disperse the crowd of disciples standing foolishly in the plaza. Then, after a careful discussion, they finally managed to come up with a plan. Gong Sun Yan first sent someone to pass a message to the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect. He lied that he had found the perfect way to enter the Immortal Cultivation world and that the test was successful. He had already sent his subordinates over. Then he claimed that he was willing to share the results with the two sections. However, he needed each of them to send someone to Awakening Heaven sect to discuss the follow-up matters. Although this statement was a little unrealistic and Gong Sun Yen also felt that it was slightly inappropriate, there was no other way. At least he did not think that he was lying. After all, they had indeed sent the cyborgs into the immortal cultivation world. Even the current, former sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect, Sidu Qitian, had followed them in. It was just that they did not know the results for the time being. After receiving the news, the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect attached great importance to it. After all this time, they were personally invited by the Supreme Elder of Awakening Heaven sect. Moreover, they were indeed studying whether there was any other way to successfully enter the immortal cultivation world other than offering human sacrifices. They were in a state of panic. They did not expect the opportunity to take the initiative to send itself to their door. On the other hand, the immortal cultivation sects and the ghost cultivation sects were also quite vigilant. After they received the news, they held a meeting in their sections. They wanted to determine what was going on and what Gong Sun Yan's purpose was. However, after discussing for a long time, the two sects could not figure out why Gong Sun Yan wanted to do this. Although the news seemed to be very suspicious, they were not willing to miss this opportunity. In the end, after thinking about it, they decided to send people to Awakening Heaven sect to see the specific situation before making a decision. Early the next morning, the two people in charge of the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect rushed to Awakening Heaven sect with their subordinates. The person sent by the former was the old master of the Song family, Song Weizong, while the person sent by the latter was the great elder of the Ghost Cultivation sect, West Mountain Mad Demon. Both of them were influential figures in their respective sections. West Mountain Mad Demon of the Ghost Cultivation sect arrived at Awakening Heaven sect first. As soon as he was led into the living room, he heard a series of footsteps behind him. He turned his head slightly and glanced with the corner of his eye. He found that Song Weizong of the Immortal Cultivation sect had also arrived. "Hey old ghost Song, I didn't expect it to be you. A few years ago you were hit by Junyo sect leader. I thought you were already dead. I didn't expect your old bones to be so tough. You're still struggling at death's door." West Mountain Mad Demon sneered. He didn't even bother to turn his face back as he sneered. In West Mountain Mad Demon's memory, Song Weizong had once led a group of disciples of the Immortal Cultivation sect to encircle and annihilate the Ghost Cultivation sect. In the end, he was suddenly attacked by his sect leader, Junyo, and was hit right in the heart. He almost died on the spot. That encirclement and annihilation failed miserably. West Mountain Mad Demon still remembered the panicked scene of the group of little ghosts of the Immortal Cultivation sect carrying Song Weizong back in a panic. It seemed that Song Weizong had been rescued. Finally, this Immortal Cultivation sect still had some ability. Humph. Before your Ghost Cultivation sect is completely eradicated, I, Song Weizong, will certainly not die easily. Song Weizong snorted coldly. Then you have to be careful. If one day lightning falls from the sky and strikes you to death, don't blame me for warning you. West Mountain Mad Demon sneered with a faint smile. I'm too lazy to talk to you about this kind of glib talk. Song Weizong glared at him and warned him with a murderous look. After you go back, tell that Junyo to be careful. Don't fall into my hands. Otherwise, I'll definitely make him die without a burial place. Song Weizong was obviously unwilling to talk to West Mountain Mad Demon. After saying this, he turned around and ordered the disciples of Awakening sect to pass the message. Hehe, I think you can't wait for this day. West Mountain Mad Demon retorted, unwilling to be outdone. Seeing that Song Weizong ignored him, he curled his lips and strolled around the living room. After Song Weizong sent the disciples of Awakening sect away, West Mountain Mad Demon rolled his eyes and pretended to be careless. I heard that in order to prepare for the opening of the Immortal Cultivation world, your Immortal Cultivation sect specially found a lot of women with spiritual chi from the secular world. Among them, there was a top-grade girl with a mysterious constitution. It seems that she was snatched from our Ghost Cultivation sect. Do you know about this? West Mountain Mad Demon had only received the news a few days ago. He heard that in order to capture a certain woman with spiritual chi in Songning City, the West Mountain Old Man had specially brought his disciples from the secular world to capture her. Chapter 1266. In the end, the Ghost Cultivation sect did not expect that the two of them would have a bad start. Not only did West Mountain Elder lose his life, but even the little girl who was supposed to be in his hands was also snatched away. Only Son Abayo managed to escape with great difficulty to report the news. What a bunch of trash. Are you talking like a human? What do you mean by snatching it away? Song Weizong frowned and said disapprovingly, even if we want to let people participate in the sacrifice, we have to ask for the consent of the person involved in advance. Unlike you ghost cultivation sect, who are worse than animals, you run into the secular world and casually capture those defenseless people. Song Weizong's tone was filled with deep disgust. Obviously, he was extremely dissatisfied with the ghost cultivation sect's approach. Ah, you're just using some sanctimonious words to gain the sympathy of those inexperienced little girls, and then promising them some money or cultivation as a lure. West Mountain Mad Demon laughed loudly, his voice full of contempt. Do you really think I don't know? What do you know? Song Weizong immediately retorted, we let them choose voluntarily. If they are unwilling, we will naturally not force them. West Mountain Mad Demon snorted from his nostrils and sneered unscrupulously, forget it. Coercion and temptation are two means to achieve the same goal. In essence, what is the difference between you and the ghost cultivation sect? You actually have the nerve to laugh at us. Your immortal cultivation sect is simply too hypocritical. You. Song Weizong was furious. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to rush over and teach West Mountain Mad Demon a lesson. However, he was stopped by a disciple of the Awakening Heaven sect who rushed over. The disciple felt the waves of killing intent echoing in the reception hall. He first panted a few times, then swallowed his saliva, braced himself and stood between the two of them. He carefully reported, two distinguished guests, the Supreme Elder has been waiting in the conference room for a long time. I hope that the two of you can temporarily move to the conference room for a discussion. If there is anything else, we can talk about it later. Since the disciple of the host who invited them had said so, Song Weizong naturally could not continue to argue with Shishan Mad Demon. He could only glare at him angrily, then under the guidance of the disciple, he turned around and walked toward the conference room. Mad Demon Shishan snorted disdainfully and looked at Song Weizong's back with a gloomy smile. Then, he put away the evil aura on his body and followed the two of them to the conference room unhurriedly. Pushing open the door of the conference room, the two of them walked in one after another. They originally thought that they would see Grand Elder Gong Sun Yen of Awakening Heaven sect on the main seat, but when they raised their heads, they were stunned to see Gong Sun Yen standing obediently to the side, and a handsome young man sitting on the main seat. At this moment, the young man was sitting with his legs crossed, holding a cup of tea with a leisurely look on his face. He had no intention of standing up to greet them. It seemed that he didn't care about the two of them at all. Beside the young man, there was another fair-skinned man sitting there silently. However, Song Weizong and Mad Demon Shishan were both experienced cultivators, so they could tell that there was something wrong with this man. It was obvious that he was a woman dressed as a man. Please take a seat, the two of you. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come. Awakening Heaven sect is deeply honored. I represent the sect master to express my gratitude to the two of you. Gong Sun Yen bowed slightly as thanks. There's no need for formalities. Elder Gong Sun must know why we are here, right? Song Weizong waved his hand and looked around the conference room. Other than the two sitting young men and Gong Sun Yen, there was no one else. He couldn't help but ask in surprise, I wonder why the Awakening Heaven sect master isn't here? Is he preparing materials to enter the immortal cultivation world? Song family master doesn't need to be anxious. Let me first introduce you. Gong Sun Yen made an inviting gesture and let Song Weizong and Mad Demon Shishan take their seats. Then he respectfully pointed at Xing Gongzi and said, This is the new sect master of our Awakening Heaven sect, Xing Gongzi. Song Weizong and Mad Demon Shishan were stunned when they heard this. They didn't bother to move their feet and looked at the fair-skinned little brother in confusion. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Gong Sun Yen felt that their surprised reactions were quite normal. Without waiting for them to ask, he immediately answered, Because our former sect master, Sidu Qitian, had important matters to attend to, he could no longer continue to manage the affairs of Awakening Heaven sect. Therefore, a few days ago he specially passed the position of sect master to Xing Gongzi. Now Xing Gongzi is in charge of Awakening Heaven sect. Song Weizong and Mad Demon Shishan were still very surprised. Awakening Heaven sect was an outstanding demonic sect in the inner martial arts world. How could the sect master be changed just like that? Moreover, they didn't inform the other sects of this news in advance. Could it be that there was some unknown inside story? Besides, since Xing Gongzi, who was disguised as a man, was the sect master of Awakening Heaven sect, why wasn't she sitting in the main seat, but another kid that they had never seen before? What was that guy doing here? The other one is. Gong Sun Yin saw the puzzled eyes of the two people. When he was about to introduce Xiao Chen to them, he hesitated a little. Xiao Chen suddenly took the initiative to introduce himself. "Oh, I'm the personal bodyguard of Xing Gong Sun. I'm also an assistant, driver, accountant, administrative and so on. My nickname is Jian." Gong Sun Yin suddenly had a few black lines on his forehead. He didn't understand what Xiao Chen was up to, but since he had said so, he couldn't directly refute it. He could only nod silently with a strange expression on his face. The two people on the opposite side looked at each other and were even more puzzled. How could a small bodyguard and assistant sit in the main seat so openly? What was the background of this guy called Jian? Didn't they agree to discuss a way to enter the immortal cultivation world? Why did such a person suddenly appear out of nowhere? Turning around, the two saw that Xing Gong Sun didn't raise any objections, and Gong Sun Yin, the supreme elder, also tacitly agreed with the statement of Jian, as if what he said was reasonable. Although Song Weizong and Mad Demon Shishan were a little puzzled, after all, they were now in someone else's territory, so it wasn't good for them to express any opinions. They could only silently find a seat and sit down. Naturally, Xiao Chen could see the doubts in the hearts of the two, but he didn't intend to explain. He just put down the cup in his hand, glanced at the two lightly and then said, "Well, since everyone is here, let's not waste everyone's time. Who wants to talk about the plan to enter the immortal cultivation world first?" Chapter 1267. Boy, everyone here is a reputable figure in the martial arts world. You are just a little assistant who runs errands. What qualifications do you have to discuss the plan of the world of cultivation with us? Mad Demon of West Mountain knocked on the table slowly and asked in a neutral tone. Of course, West Mountain Mad Devil did not really think that Xiao Chen was just a handyman. However, since this guy was pretending to be stupid and refused to tell the truth, he did not intend to let him have his way. He simply played along and taunted him first. Anyway, there was no loss in taking advantage of him verbally. Song Weizong was relatively calm. Although he also had doubts about Xiao Chen's identity, he would not choose to act rashly before he figured out the situation. "What's wrong with you? Have you become stupid after practicing evil arts? Didn't I just say that I can manage everything? Going to the world of immortal cultivation is a big thing, and I have to supervise it carefully." Xiao Chen rolled his eyes at West Mountain Mad Devil and shouted impatiently. "You are just a little assistant. What the hell is there to supervise? Don't talk nonsense over there. I don't believe you." West Mountain Mad Devil suddenly became furious and shouted, slamming the table. "Don't talk nonsense. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Hurry up and tell me everything you know, then get out." Xiao Chen waved his hand decisively and did not even bother to look at him. Xiao Chen had never liked evil cultivators. If it were not for the fact that he wanted to inquire about the situation of the world of immortal cultivation, he would have killed West Mountain Mad Devil long ago. West Mountain Mad Devil was furious at Xiao Chen's arrogance. He jumped up and pointed at Xiao Chen fiercely, gritting his teeth and saying, "Say your grandmother's leg. I think you are looking for death." Before his voice died away, West Mountain Mad Devil had already activated his mental cultivation method. A black mist condensed on his body and tightly wrapped his arms. Then he quickly rushed in front of Xiao Chen, waving his fists and smashing them fiercely. Bang! A loud bang was accompanied by a cry of pain. A figure suddenly flew backward and hit the wall of the conference room before falling to the ground. It was the West Mountain Mad Demon who had just punched. Just now, at the moment when West Mountain Mad Devil punched out, he thought that Xiao Chen would definitely die. However, he suddenly felt his vision blur and he instantly lost track of Xiao Chen. Then there was a sound of something tearing through the air behind him. Mad Demon Shishan cursed in his heart, but it was too late for him to react. He could only grit his teeth and take the hit. Although he was prepared to defend himself, he was still sent flying. Everyone in the conference room was dumbfounded, especially Gong Sun Yin and Song Weizong. They were extremely shocked and couldn't believe the scene in front of them. Just now, West Mountain Mad Devil's punch was extremely domineering. The two of them speculated that even they might not be able to escape unscathed. They did not expect that not only was Xiao Chen unscathed, but he had also circled behind West Mountain Mad Devil at a speed that ordinary people could not see with the naked eye and kicked him hard. Song Weizong, who was originally rather indifferent, now had a somewhat grave expression on his face. He could not help but re-evaluate Xiao Chen, secretly estimating this fellow's strength. In all fairness, this guy was definitely not as simple and naive as he looked. This was because when he dodged West Mountain Mad Devil's attack and took the initiative to attack, he did not show his cultivation at all. In other words, Song Weizong couldn't even see Xiao Chen's dodging movements clearly. He could only feel that Xiao Chen was using extremely ordinary punches and kicks. However, just a few ordinary punches and kicks were enough to send Shishan Mad Demon flying into the wall. What exactly was this guy's strength? In the martial arts world, besides the giant bull of Shishan and the old man of the Hong family, there was no one who could make Song Weizong feel fear. Who would have thought that such a young junior would appear out of nowhere today? Which sect was he from? Xiao Chen watched West Mountain Mad Devil fall heavily to the ground, wiped his hands casually, stared at him and scolded, "Damn it, you're just an elder of a sect. Do you really think you're someone important? You really shine with a little sunlight and lay eggs with a chicken coop. If it weren't for the fact that you're still useful, I would have killed you long ago." After scolding him for a while, Xiao Chen did not seem to be satisfied. He rolled up his sleeves and walked over. He aimed at his stomach and kicked him hard, sending him flying into the air. Then he punched him hard in the face. Even the bystanders could feel the pain. Ah! West Mountain Mad Devil could not resist at all. He only had time to scream. He felt that his entire face was about to be deformed by Xiao Chen's fist. However, this was not the end. Next, Xiao Chen's fists came surging like a storm. West Mountain Mad Devil did not even have the chance to beg for mercy. He could only use his hands to protect the vital parts of his body, struggling to support himself. "Elder Gong Sun, you deliberately invited us here. You didn't invite us here just to beat West Mountain Mad Devil up, did you?" Song Weizong could not stand it anymore. He turned his head and said to Gong Sun Yin, "Although this guy really deserves a beating, I'm not interested in watching him get beaten up. If there's nothing else, I want to leave first." The entire conference room was filled with the sound of Xiao Chen's punches and kicks. Occasionally, West Mountain Mad Devil's screams could be heard. It was painful to listen to. Not to mention Song Weizong, anyone else would not be able to bear it. In fact, Song Weizong felt quite happy watching West Mountain Mad Devil being beaten up by Xiao Chen. It felt like he had vented his anger. However, his main purpose of coming here today was not to see West Mountain Mad Devil make a fool of himself. He wanted to understand the opening of the world of cultivation. Therefore, he did not want to waste any more time. "Master Song, please wait a moment." Gong Sun Yin quickly comforted Song Weizong. He then turned to Miss Xing with a bitter face and said, "That? Sect leader Xing, do you think you can ask Xiao Jian to stop for a while? After all, we still have other things to discuss. It's not a good idea to keep him waiting. What do you think?" Gong Sun Yin naturally did not dare to provoke Xiao Chen directly. Wouldn't it be over if he got involved? Helplessly, he could only look for Miss Xing to help persuade him. From Gong Sun Yan's point of view, Xiao Chen seemed to be interested in Miss Xing, otherwise, he would not have helped her seize the position of sect leader. Therefore, Miss Xing should be able to persuade him. Miss Xing also understood what Gong Sun Yan meant. She nodded, stood up and walked over. She gently pulled on the corner of Xiao Chen's clothes and said in a low voice, "Hey, that's enough. Don't you want to ask about the world of cultivation? Don't accidentally kill him. Otherwise, you won't be able to get anything out of him." Chapter 1268. "Oh, since Sect Master Xing is pleading on your behalf, I'll give her face and spare your life." Xiao Chen didn't object. He snorted and stopped what he was doing. He turned around and walked towards the main seat. Xiao Chen knew that West Mountain Mad Devil still had some value, so he did not go too hard on him. At most, he would make the old man feel pain for a while, but it would definitely not be fatal. However, although Xiao Chen stopped hitting, West Mountain Mad Devil did not have any intention of standing up. He was still curled up on the ground with his eyes closed. From time to time he would let out a low moan. It seemed that he was going to continue playing dead and did not intend to cooperate with Xiao Chen and the others. Slowly returning to his seat, Xiao Chen found that West Mountain Mad Devil was still lying on the ground and wailing. He was not angry but said slowly, "Trash from West Mountain, what's wrong? Are you trying to blackmail me? If you think that lying on the ground is more comfortable than sitting in your seat, then I will suffer today and directly cripple your limbs. This way you can lie on the ground for the rest of your life. What do you think?" "You win." Xiao Chen's threat fell into West Mountain Mad Devil's ears. He knew that Xiao Chen would do what he said, so he could only endure the pain on his body and stand up, grimacing in pain. He glared at Xiao Chen fiercely, but his face was already swollen, so the angry glare did not seem to have any deterrence at all. As West Mountain Mad Devil and Song Weizong's subordinates were blocked outside the gate of Qitian Gate, he had to rely on himself and limped back to his seat. Xiao Qin ignored West Mountain Mad Devil's muttering. After he sat down, he said lightly, "Okay, I don't want to talk nonsense. This time, I invited the two of you here to ask how your preparations are going." Mad Demon of Shishan was still gasping for air due to the pain from the beating. Song Weizong was already surprised. Why couldn't he understand what Jian was saying? Since we're all going to enter the world of cultivation, then we should all work together. Don't split into 3 groups. You go in your group and I go in mine. That's a waste of time and energy. Moreover, if there's a problem, there's no way to solve it in time. Xiao Qin waited for a while and seeing that no one spoke, he added another sentence. Song Weizong couldn't help but say, Friend Jian, I've come to the Awakening Heaven sect to participate in this meeting because Elder Gong Sun sent us a message saying that the Awakening Heaven sect has already discovered a way to enter the cultivation world. That's why we've come to discuss it with him. Xiao Qin glanced at Gong Sun Yen. Gong Sun Yen was sweating profusely, but he didn't know how to explain. He could only nod with difficulty. Song Weizong looked at the two of them strangely and continued, "So why don't you talk about how to enter the world of cultivation first, and then everyone can analyze it in detail? What do you think?" Song Weizong was a little puzzled. It was clearly the Awakening Heaven sect who called him here, and from the looks of it, it seemed that the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect were going to cooperate with them. But now, they didn't mention a word about the way to enter the world of cultivation. What was the point of cooperating? Oh, that method won't work now because the only transmission array has been destroyed by that idiot Sidu Qitian. It can't send anyone else to the world of cultivation. Xiao Qin spread his hands and said unhurriedly, "What? That Awakening Heaven palm? Did the former sect leader go to the world of cultivation?" Song Weizong was shocked and immediately asked. "He went in, but whether he's dead or alive is still unknown." Xiao Qin knocked on the table and said his final purpose. "Because of this, I've specially asked the two of you to come here today. I want to ask you, is there any other way to enter the world of cultivation? If there is, you might as well share it with everyone." Song Weizong and West Mountain Mad Devil finally understood the ins and outs of the whole matter. Although Song Weizong was stunned when he learned that Sidu Qitian had entered the world of cultivation in advance, he quickly calmed down and was not too surprised. He lowered his head to think about something and did not immediately choose to agree or refuse. West Mountain Mad Devil was silent. He was very dissatisfied with Xiao Chen's attitude. It was obvious that the Awakening Heaven sect could not get any benefits themselves, so they took the initiative to cooperate with the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect, wanting to get a share of their plan. In the end, he even put on the posture of a master. This was simply treating others as fools. However, due to Xiao Chen's high strength, West Mountain Mad Devil did not dare to complain. He could only choose to remain silent. He planned to see how Song Weizong would deal with it before making a decision. As for Gong Sun Yen, who was standing on the side with his head down, he had long been defeated by Xiao Chen. Naturally, he had no opinion at all. Moreover, the Awakening Heaven sect's plan had completely failed. Of course, he was anxious to use other ways to enter the world of cultivation, so he could only listen to Xiao Chen's instructions at the moment. Seeing that both of them were in deep thought, Xiao Chen was not in a hurry to urge them. Instead, he said lightly, "You don't have to rush to give me an answer for the time being. You can think about it for a while. Anyway, in addition to you, the people of the Awakening Heaven sect are also looking for other ways to enter the world of cultivation. When the time comes, they may enter before you." Song Weizong's expression changed for a while, as if he had suddenly made up his mind. He said, Jian, my little friend, please allow me to go out for a while and report to the sect first. After all, this matter is of great importance. I must discuss it with the people in charge of the other sects before I can give you a confirmation." After that, Song Weizong took out his mobile phone and apologized to Xiao Chen. Then he walked out of the door. It seemed that he was going to make a phone call. Xiao Chen waved his hand, leaned on the chair, and put himself in a comfortable position. Then he closed his eyes and rested, waiting for Song Weizong's return. When West Mountain Mad Devil saw this scene, he frowned slightly and thought to himself, Song Weizong, this fool won't be swayed by this, will he? In fact, as long as both the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect keep their mouths shut, that kid won't be able to get anything out of them. Since this guy named Jian claimed that they were confident of finding a way to enter the world of cultivation, then let him go and find it. Who knew when he would find it? Why should he share his own achievements with him? After waiting for a while, Song Weizong finished the phone call and returned to the conference room. As soon as he entered the door, he nodded slightly to Xiao Chen and said, "Ah Jian, my little friend, our immortal cultivation sect has discussed it internally. We are willing to cooperate with the Awakening Heaven sect. Since everyone's purpose is the same, if we can enter the world of cultivation together, we can take care of each other." Chapter 1269. What? Hearing this, Mad Devil of Shishan was really shocked. He never thought that the people of the immortal cultivation sect, who had always thought highly of themselves and acted alone, would actually be willing to cooperate with a young boy. What was going on? In fact, the immortal cultivation sect also had their own ideas. This time they had recruited relatively few women with spiritual energy. If they forcefully opened the sacrifice, it was very likely that they would not be able to open the passage. Instead, these women would be lost, and in the end they would suffer a double loss. The ghost cultivation sect seemed to have only captured a portion of people, and it was probably not enough. Since everyone was short of manpower, it was better to gather together. In this way, wouldn't they be able to enter the world of immortal cultivation? The most important thing was that if everyone went in together, they would be able to see how many people from the ghost cultivation sect had entered. This way they would not have to worry all day about how many people from the ghost cultivation sect had secretly entered and would be caught off guard. If everyone gathered together to open the passage to the world of immortal cultivation, it meant that the number of people from both sides would basically be equal. In this way they would also be able to deal with the situation appropriately. After all, whether it was letting the people from the ghost cultivation sect enter the world of immortal cultivation alone or letting them learn something and return with glory, it was not a good thing. It was best to let them be under his watch. Sure enough, Xiao Chen nodded with satisfaction. Then he turned to look at West Mountain Mad Devil and said, "What about the ghost cultivation sect?" "The immortal cultivation sect has already agreed. What do you say?" West Mountain Mad Devil did not speak for a long time. Song Weizong's attitude was unexpected. Originally, he thought that even if this guy did not refuse immediately, he would at least delay it for a while and test the other party's attitude. He did not expect that Song Weizong would agree so directly after going out to make a phone call. This made West Mountain Mad Devil suddenly panic, and for a moment he did not know how to deal with it. Seeing that West Mountain Mad Devil had been hesitating for a long time and did not give an answer, Xiao Chen could not help but sneer and mercilessly ridicule. It seems that the immortal cultivation sect is more reliable. They know when to advance and when to retreat, unlike those idiots from the ghost cultivation sect. They have to think back and forth for such a simple problem for a long time. I think we should not call them the ghost cultivation sect. Since there is something wrong with their brains, we should just call them the brain cultivation sect. You. Shishan Mad Devil was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He was an elder in the ghost cultivation sect, and his status had always been high and mighty. Other than the sect leader, Shishan Junyo, who could give him orders, everyone else was very respectful and fearful of him. When had he ever suffered such vexation? What, you and me? Should he cooperate or not? Good or bad? It was a simple decision. Hurry up and say it. This young master has no time to waste with you. Xiao Chen looked at West Mountain Mad Devil, who was angry but did not dare to speak. He could not help but slap the table heavily. His sharp eyes looked straight at West Mountain Mad Devil. Obviously he had lost his patience. West Mountain Mad Devil was startled by Xiao Chen's heavy slap on the table. He felt a cold killing intent coming straight at him. He was afraid that Song Weizong would kill him in anger, so he quickly waved his hand. His eyes wandered back and forth between Song Weizong, Xing Gongzi and Gong Sun Yen. After pondering for a while, a trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes, and he finally spoke. "I can't give you an answer right now because I have to ask our sect leader, Shishan Junyo. If he agrees to participate in your operation, I naturally won't have any objections," West Mountain Mad Devil said in a hoarse voice. "What the F***CK, is there something wrong with your ghost cultivation sect? You said you wanted to come over to discuss something, but you sent a guy who can't make a decision. Are you deliberately looking for trouble?" Xiao Chen suddenly rolled his eyes and said impatiently, "Then why are you still sitting here? Hurry up and call him to ask? Don't tell me you want me to invite you?" That's not necessary. But before I ask, I have another request. Even if our ghost cultivation sect agrees to cooperate with you, it's only a one-sided alliance." West Mountain Mad Devil glanced at Gong Sun Yen and added, "As for Awakened sect, because they didn't inform us before and chose to act on their own, and the plan to send people to the immortal cultivation world also failed, we naturally can't let them join us this time as punishment. When Song Weizong heard West Mountain Mad Devil's opinion, he also nodded slightly. Although the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect were not on good terms, they had a consensus on this point. With the help of an expert like Xiao Qin, the immortal cultivation sect was certainly happy to see it happen. However, Awakened sect was not very useful now. At best, it was of little value, so there was no need to take them to the immortal cultivation world and waste the existing resources. Xiao Qin yawned as if he suddenly thought of something. He said casually, "I forgot to tell you just now. In addition to my part-time job in Awakened sect, the current sect leader of Awakened sect, Xing Gongzi, happens to be my wife." Cough cough. West Mountain Mad Devil had just picked up the water on the table and took a sip. When he heard this, he almost choked. He lay on the table and coughed for a long time. Xiao Qin couldn't be bothered with him. He spread his hands and continued, "If you don't allow the Awakening Gate to participate in this operation, then my wife might be very unhappy. If she's unhappy, then I'll be unhappy. Once I'm in a bad mood, this plan of entering the world of cultivation might not go smoothly. It might even be put on hold. You guys have to think carefully." The reason why Xiao Qin used this reason to threaten the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect was to point out his relationship with Xing Gongzi. On the other hand, he wanted Xing Gongzi, the sect leader, to have a strong enough background. Even if he was not by her side in the future, she would be able to better establish herself in the inner martial world. Cough cough. I didn't expect it to be like this. After West Mountain Mad Devil pretended to cough for a while, as if he had just heard what Xiao Qin said, he put on a surprised expression and sighed. Since sect leader Xing and little friend Xiao Chen have such a relationship, of course, Awakened sect can join. West Mountain Mad Devil did not expect that the two of them would have such a close relationship. He was not a fool. He knew very well that since the young man in front of him said it, he would definitely be able to do it. Now that he was under the control of others, he really had no choice but to agree. There seemed to be no better choice. Our immortal cultivation sect has no objections. Song Weizong was very disdainful of West Mountain Mad Devil's hypocritical acting, but he still echoed his opinion. Song Weizong was also a little afraid of Xiao Qin. After all, Xiao Qin's strength was clear for all to see. Even if Song Weizong was not willing, he would not openly reject Xiao Qin on the spot. That was clearly an irrational action. He might end up like the West Mountain Mad Demon and get beaten up. Chapter 1270. Lady Xing, who was sitting next to Xiao Qin, blushed and looked very shy. She clenched her fists tightly and did not dare to move. She was a little nervous and embarrassed, but also a little excited. Was Xiao Qin's action a confession to her? Or did it mean that he had already acknowledged her? Little Xing remembered that Xiao Qin had said something similar back in the Venerable Realm. At that time she thought he was just spouting nonsense. Now that he mentioned it again, could it be that he really wanted to take it a step further and improve their relationship? Gong Sun Yen, who was standing at the side, was expressionless. He did not express any opinion about Xiao Qin's declaration of sovereignty. It was as if he had tacitly agreed to it. Gong Sun Yen had been immersed in the Awakening Heaven sect for a long time and had played many tricks. Therefore he knew very well that in the face of absolute strength, any trick would be ineffective. Therefore at this time he did not dare to show any dissatisfaction. In addition, Gong Sun Yan's character was to bully the weak and fear the strong. Although he was very ambitious, he was very timid. Otherwise, he would not have deliberately made so many moves after Situ Haoyan had left for so long. He had to make sure that Situ Haoyan would not respond. Now that Xiao Qin's strength was so high that even the Immortal Cultivation faction and the Ghost Cultivation faction, which he respected and feared, did not dare to act rashly in front of him. How could Gong Sun Yen dare to have other thoughts? He could only choose to surrender. Moreover, now that Xiao Qin had taken the initiative to let Awakening Heaven sect join because of his relationship with Xing Gongzi, Gong Sun Yen would not oppose it. Gong Sun Yen felt that if he could take advantage of this opportunity, he might be able to fulfill the wish that he had failed to achieve with his biohuman plan. He could use this opportunity to enter the world of immortal cultivation and obtain a higher level of strength. No objections, right? If not, then hurry up and ask for instructions. Do you believe that I will give you a kick as a plane ticket? Xiao Qin waited for a while. Seeing that everyone was silent, he glared at Mad Devil of Shishan and shouted fiercely. Mad Demon Shishan looked angry. His lips squirmed as if he wanted to curse a few times, but in the end he didn't say anything. He stood up and walked out of the conference room dejectedly. Song Weizong looked at the back of West Mountain Mad Devil and then looked at Xiao Chen's expression. He was wondering if he should leave first when Xiao Chen suddenly said with a smile, "Song family head, now that the annoying old man from West Mountain is not here, I have something to ask you." Song Weizong was slightly taken aback, but he quickly waved his hand and said, "Hee, I don't dare to ask for advice. Little friend Jian, feel free to speak your mind. As long as this old man knows the answer, I will definitely tell you everything." After seeing how Xiao Chen dealt with the mad demon of Xishan, Song Weizong had developed a little respect for him from the bottom of his heart, so his attitude had unconsciously become a lot more polite. "Oh, actually, it's nothing big. I just want to understand something from you." Xiao Chen didn't bother to beat around the bush and asked directly, "I heard that your immortal cultivation sect can open the door to the immortal cultivation world through the method of sacrifice, right? How does this process work? Since it's a sacrifice, what kind of sacrifices do you need to prepare?" As for the specific method of sacrifice, Xiao Chen was still confused. Thinking that Hong Zhu and Xie Fei needed to participate in the sacrifice, and that Goddess Shen might also be involved, he thought that it would be better to take the time to find out more about it while the Song family head was here. If there were any problems, he would be able to find a solution in time. This. Song Weizong's expression changed slightly. He stroked his beard and did not speak for a while. Although there was nothing strange on the surface, Song Weizong's heart was already in turmoil at this time. He was extremely surprised. How did this kid know about the sacrifice? Logically speaking, this matter should be the core secret of the Immortal Cultivation Sect and the Ghost Cultivation Sect. Even some of the elders in the family may not know about it. Where did he hear about it? And from this guy's tone, it seems that this matter is already set in stone, and there is no trace of testing. Who gave him this certainty? Looking at Song Weizong's changing expression and his hesitant look, Xiao Chen curled his lips and said with a faint smile, "Looking at Song family head's expression, could it be that the information I received was wrong? Or does Song family head feel that there is no need to tell me, a partner, the details of opening the door to the immortal cultivation world?" No, little friend Jian, please don't misunderstand. This old man doesn't mean that at all." Song Weizong shook his head like a rattled drum. He was afraid that if he accidentally angered this demon, he would be beaten up like the mad demon of Xishan. However, Xiao Chen refused to give up. He continued to ask, "Then Song family head, are you afraid that after I know the specific details, I will no longer cooperate with your immortal cultivation sect and turn around to make a fortune on my own?" Sweat dripped down Song Weizong's forehead. He could only open his mouth with difficulty and say, that, "Our immortal cultivation sect does have the method of sacrifice, but as for the specific operation I'm also not very clear. This is because this is the common secret of the immortal cultivation sect. The relevant secret manual is still in the family's secret place. Only when the sacrifice begins can it be officially announced." Xiao Chen's face immediately darkened. Even a fool could see that Song Weizong was lying. As the dignified Song family head, how could he not even know the method of the sacrifice? Isn't this nonsense? Does he really think that he is a naive little rabbit who is ignorant of the world? According to what you said, even if I wanted to know the procedure of the sacrifice in advance and then make sufficient preparations in advance, it is impossible? Xiao Chen's tone had become somewhat dangerous. Actually, that may not be the case. Song Weizong swallowed his saliva and asked tentatively, "How about I first discuss it with the other families? After all, the secret method of the sacrifice is a common item of our entire sect. This old man can only represent the Song family and cannot make decisions for others. If they do not object, this old man will tell you the entire method of the sacrifice. What do you think, little friend Jian?" Song Weizong could naturally see that Xiao Chen was already a bit unhappy. However, he also did not want to hand over his trump card so quickly. In desperation, he could only choose to use a delaying tactic to buy some time before making a decision. Could it be that other than the Song family and the Hong family, there are other families participating? Xiao Chen was a bit surprised. Previously, when Gong Sunyan had mentioned it to him, Xiao Chen had thought that those unknown small families were only some martial cultivators and demonic cultivators, or even ordinary people who were only there to do manual labor. Chapter 1271. But according to Song Weizong, those families were also cultivator families. He had thought that the number of cultivators in the inner martial arts world was very small, but now it seemed that the scale was quite large. Yes, because the Song family and the Hong family have a relatively deep foundation and a relatively large number of people, the other small families elected us as leaders to deal with some routine affairs. However, opening the world of immortal cultivation is of great importance, and the sacrificial method really needs everyone's consent before it can be taken out. Our two families dare not make decisions in private. Please forgive us, little friend Ajian. Song Weizong did not even dare to breathe as he explained with a bitter face. Okay then, let's do as you say. Xiaoqin did not force him this time. Instead, he nodded and said faintly, if you have made a decision, come and tell me immediately so that I can prepare in advance. After all, Xiaoqin did not have any deep hatred with the immortal cultivation sections. They were all cultivators, so there was no need to push them too far and make enemies for themselves. Anyway, it was not the time for the sacrificial ceremony yet. A few more days was fine. Thank you, little friend Ajian. I'm going to call the other families right now. As soon as there is news, come and inform me immediately. Song Weizong's worried heart finally fell to the ground at this moment. He hurriedly cupped his hands in gratitude, then wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, took out his mobile phone and left the conference room in a hurry. Xiaoqin shook his head when he saw Song Weizong's flustered look. He found it a little funny. The effect of his beating just now was pretty good. These people looked at him as if they were looking at a scourge or ferocious beast. Fortunately, the sacrificial ceremony had not started yet, so Xiaoqin was not so eager to know the process. Now that everything was under his control, there was no need to make enemies for no reason. Therefore, Xiaoqin let Song Weizong and West Mountain Mad Devil go and interrogate them separately, which could be regarded as a buffer period for them. While Song Weizong left in a hurry, West Mountain Mad Devil finally found a secluded place in a corner of Open Heaven Gate and stood still. West Mountain Mad Devil looked around warily, making sure that no one was eavesdropping around, then picked up his mobile phone and immediately dialed a phone number on the screen, waiting anxiously for the other party to answer. Mad Demon, what did Awakening Heaven Gate say? Mad Demon Shishan waited for a long time before the phone was connected. Then a man's cold voice came. It sounded as stiff and emotionless as a dead man's. Reporting to Sect Master, Situ Qitian is no longer the Sect Master of Awakening Heaven Sect. He has passed the position of Sect Master to a little girl named Xing. West Mountain Mad Demon did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly reported. Xing? Shishan Giant Yak seemed to be slightly surprised, but its voice did not waver. It was still very rigid. It repeated the name several times as if trying to remember if it had heard of this person before. Most importantly, when I came here this time, I found out that there was a guy named Ajian by the girl's side. He's very powerful. I wanted to test him just now. Mad Devil Shishan told him everything about how he was beaten up. Again? Where did this person come from? Shishan Giant Yak was really a little surprised this time. After all, the strength of West Mountain Mad Demon was already outstanding in the martial arts world. Who else could beat him to the point that he could not fight back except for those old ghosts of the Immortal Cultivation Sect? Shishan Giant Yak did not care too much about the change of the Sect Master of Awakening Heaven Gate. If someone could defeat West Mountain Mad Demon, he would only frown a little. However, when the two things were combined together, Shishan Giant Yak had to pay attention to it. Could it be that in addition to the Ghost Cultivation Sect and the Immortal Cultivation Sect, there was a higher level sect in the martial arts world? Could it be that Awakening Heaven Gate had taken refuge in that sect, so this time they were specially called to demonstrate? Xing Ajian. Shishan Giant Yak repeated these two names several times. He kept searching the memory in his mind, but found that he had no impression of these two people at all. Since he could not remember for a while, Shishan Giant Yak simply put this matter aside and asked, speaking of which, didn't Awakening Heaven Gate claim to have found another way to enter the world of immortal cultivation, so they called you over? Did you find out what method it was? Is Gong Sun Yen, that old thing, fooling us? Sect Master, you are right. Gong Sun Yen is indeed fooling us. Shishan Mad Demon suddenly slapped his thigh and shouted angrily. What? Shishan Giant Yak's tone suddenly rose. He was obviously a little angry. He said fiercely, when I received the news, I felt that things were a little strange. That old guy never gets up early without benefits. Why did he come to us to share it? What is going on? Tell me in detail. Qitian men had indeed discovered a teleportation formation leading to the world of cultivators, but it had been destroyed by Situ Qitian due to a freak accident. Although he himself was transmitted to the world of immortal cultivation with the help of that array, it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. Shishan Mad Demon shook his head helplessly and honestly repeated what Xiao Chen had just said. How could it be so coincidental? Sidu Chiqian is really a piece of trash. Shishan Mad Demon couldn't help but curse angrily. After thinking about it, he felt that something was wrong and asked, "That's not right. Since this method has failed, why did he deliberately call you over? Just to let you know about this tragic thing? Or to tell them that the sect master has been changed?" "No, Awakening Heaven Gate wants to cooperate with our Ghost Cultivation Sect and the Immortal Cultivation Sect to enter the world of immortal cultivation using our method," Shishan Mad Demon replied. F***Seek. Shishan Mad Demon originally wanted to curse, but considering his identity and status, he forcibly held back and said in a gloomy tone, "Awakening Heaven Gate really has a good plan. Did you agree to them?" "Not yet," Shishan Mad Demon quickly denied, but Song Weizong went out and made a phone call. After he came back he agreed to cooperate, so I slipped out and called you. Hearing this, Shishan Mad Demon's mood became very depressed. Originally, the number of women with spiritual chi that the Ghost Cultivation Sect had collected was not enough. If they wanted to forcibly start the sacrifice, it would inevitably be a little difficult. Shishan Mad Demon still hoped to use the method provided by Awakening Heaven Gate to directly enter the world of immortal cultivation without the sacrifice. He did not expect such an unforeseen event to happen. Instead, Awakening Heaven Gate wanted to share a piece of the cake with them. Chapter 1272. Sect Leader, why don't we ignore them? Why don't we send people to look for other women with spiritual chi? Shishan Mad Demon waited for a long time and didn't see his leader speak, so he suggested, "Didn't we sense 2 of them near the Jia family of the inner martial arts world? I'll send someone to catch them. Maybe we can get enough people in this way." In fact, the women with spiritual chi that the Ghost Cultivation Sect sensed near the Jia family were Ling and Ling Chenxue. However, they didn't dare to catch them at that time. The Ghost Cultivation Sect was originally a sect that couldn't be seen in the light. They were the type of people who were hated by everyone. Although they were not afraid to fight against the Jia family alone, if the Jia family became angry and joined forces with other sects and families to fight against the Ghost Cultivation Sect, then this matter would be troublesome. Absolutely not. Shishan Giant Bull immediately rejected this idea and said in a deep voice, "Now Chi Tian Sect, the leader of the demon sect in the internal martial arts world, is eyeing us covetously, waiting for the fishermen to profit from the fight. It is really unwise to offend the Jia family, one of the 3 big families. You must not act rashly." "I didn't think it through," Shishan Mad Demon responded dejectedly. Shishan Mad Demon pondered for a moment, and suddenly a sinister idea flashed in his mind. He immediately ordered coldly, "How about this? Since Jian wants us to cooperate, and the Immortal Cultivation Sect has agreed, why don't we beat them at their own game? Next, you go and promise Jian that we can cooperate with them, and then—" Shishan Mad Demon laughed strangely as he revealed the sinister plan that he had just come up with. As expected of the leader of Shishan Mad Demon. After listening to the plan, Shishan Mad Demon repeatedly praised, "If this plan succeeds smoothly, then our Ghost Cultivation Sect will slaughter the Immortal Cultivation Sect sooner or later. At that time, we can take all the other sects and families under our command, and we no longer have to hide in the inner martial arts world." At this point, the Mad Demon of the Shishan Mountain could not help but chuckle. He looked very proud of himself. It was as if he could already see the people of the Immortal Cultivation Sect being trampled under his feet and the scene of the Ghost Cultivation Sect dominating the martial arts world. "Don't think about this for now. Hurry up and get things done. I'll ask someone to send those girls over later." Shishan Giant Ox had regained his composure, and his voice became as stiff and rigid as before. "All right. I'll wait for your news, Sect Leader." West Mountain Mad Demon quickly stopped laughing, hung up the phone and ran back to the conference room. After returning to the conference room, Mad Demon of Shishan found that Song Weizong was no longer there. However, the few people from Awakening Heaven Sect were still there. Without thinking too much, he immediately found Xiao Chen with a smile and expressed that the Ghost Cultivation Sect was willing to cooperate with Awakening Heaven Sect. During the cooperation period, they could provide all kinds of cultivation resources that little friend Xiao Chen and the others from Awakening Heaven Sect needed to express their sincerity. After listening, Xiao Chen nodded slightly, indicating that he already knew, and sent Mad Demon of Shishan Mountain away. Originally, Mad Demon of Shishan Mountain thought that Xiao Chen would be flattered by his enthusiasm, but it turned out that he was splashed with a basin of cold water. Although he was dissatisfied, he did not dare to show it. He was afraid that Xiao Chen would beat him up again if he was unhappy. So, he had to leave the conference room obediently. Looking at the back of Mad Demon of Shishan Mountain, Xiao Chen's expression was a little solemn. He was not too interested in the so-called cultivation resources. On the contrary, the ghost cultivation sect was hesitant before, but they agreed so readily. Xiao Chen keenly guessed that there should be some conspiracy behind this. If it was just the ghost cultivation sect's conspiracy, Xiao Chen would not be too concerned. He estimated that the other party only had the leader of Giant Ox who was a little more powerful. However, coupled with the slightly vague attitude of the immortal cultivation sect just now, it made Xiao Chen a little uneasy. If the ghost cultivation sect and the immortal cultivation sect both objected to awakened sect's continued participation in the sacrificial ceremony and threatened not to hand over the sacrificial ceremony method, then it would be difficult for him to fight against the two sects at the same time. Xiao Chen knocked on the table rhythmically as he pondered with a frown. If he wanted to find a few helpers, it would be a little difficult. Apart from the Jia family and Awakening Heaven sect, which Xiao Chen could deploy, the other sects and families in the martial arts world did not have any relations with him. Moreover, even if they were willing to help him, he would not need them at all. This was because the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect were all cultivators. Even if he mobilized all the experts of the Jia family and Awakened sect, they might not have the strength to compete with the other party. On the contrary, they might be completely annihilated. Xiao Chen was not willing to risk the lives of other innocent people. He had to think of another way. After instructing Gong Sun Yen to properly arrange the food and lodging for Song Weizong and West Mountain Mad Devil, Xiao Chen bade farewell to Miss Xing and then stood up to leave the conference room. As he walked, he pondered over a more suitable method. Back in his room, Xiao Chen sat at the table with a sullen face. He had been thinking for a long time but could not think of a suitable idea. Did he really have to hope that the immortal cultivation sect would obediently hand over the sacrificial ceremony method? Right now, Cheng Minjing, Tian Wangshou and the rest were temporarily staying in Awakening Heaven sect. If he were to place his hopes on an unpredictable sect, it was very likely that not only would he suffer a calamity, but his woman would also be implicated. Leaning against the back of the chair, Xiao Chen's dignified gaze inadvertently fell on the table. Other than his luggage, there were also the fragments of the flying sword that he had put away earlier. Staring at the fragments, Xiao Chen suddenly thought of the time when he was dealing with Sidu Qitian. At that time, the flying sword techniques that he had used had scared Sidu Qitian, whose strength was higher than his. If this flying sword was intact, he might be able to rely on those techniques to kill some evil cultivators who were scheming against him. This way, he could also intimidate the people from the immortal cultivation sect so that they would not dare to do anything. Elder Heaven Ancestor, look at this flying sword. It has already been broken into pieces. Can you let the fire of the underworld reforge it and restore it to its original appearance? Xiao Chen arranged the fragments of the flying sword and put them back together. Looking at the cracks on the body of the sword, he asked helplessly but still had a glimmer of hope. I think it will be very difficult. After being struck by the lightning tribulation, this flying sword has already lost its spirituality. Even if it is reforged, it will not be able to fly like before. Elder Heaven Ancestor shook his head and mercilessly pierced through Xiao Chen's hope. Chapter 1273. Sigh, if I could recover, I would at least have a higher chance of success. Now. Xiao Chen sighed and frowned even more. Compared to this matter, I think there's another problem that you need to consider now. Before Xiao Chen could finish speaking, the Elder Heaven Ancestor suddenly said in a serious tone. What's wrong? What happened? Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. There was something wrong with the tone of the Elder Heaven Ancestor. You've been busy these few days, so I haven't found a chance to tell you. I guess you haven't realized it either. Ever since you ordered in Xiaoma to merge with the flames of the underworld and successfully tricked Bai Zhe, and Xiaoma's primordial spirit has been dissipating. I guess he'll disappear completely after a while. The Elder Heaven Ancestor explained with difficulty. What? How could this be? Xiao Chen was shocked. He had been busy dealing with the matters of the immortal cultivation world and had been busy with external affairs. He did not pay much attention to the condition of the two primordial spirits in his body. When he heard the Elder Heaven Ancestor's words, he was shocked. Xiao Chen immediately checked in Xiaoma's primordial spirit and found that it was indeed as the Elder Heaven Ancestor had said. The primordial spirit was indeed fading. Even if he wanted to transfer his primordial spirit to treat him, it would be useless. Don't waste your primordial spirit. It's useless. It's precisely because the attribute of the flames of the underworld's primordial spirit restrains the attribute of Xiaoma's primordial spirit that the injury is irreversible. The elder heaven ancestor stopped Xiao Chen's futile efforts and explained slowly, if you hadn't asked them to merge to deal with the spiritual beast, and Xiaoma's primordial spirit wouldn't have been burned. Now, even using primordial spirit won't be able to help him recover. I'm sorry, Xiaoma. I didn't expect that you wouldn't even be able to protect your primordial spirit in order to save me. You're about to turn into ashes. Xiao Chen stared at Xiaoma's dim primordial spirit and muttered, if I had known this would happen, I would have thought of another way to deal with Bai Zhe. Xiao Chen was feeling very guilty at this moment. He did not realize that the problem would be so serious. Although he had captured Bai Zhe as a mount, he had paid the price of Xiaoma's primordial spirit. The price was too high. It's all right. As long as Master is fine, it's fine. And Little Demon said weakly, anyway, I've already lived for so many years. I'm content. With every sentence Xiaoma spoke, his primordial spirit dimmed a little. It was obvious that he could not hold on for much longer. All right, don't say anything. Xiao Chen hurriedly stopped Xiaoma from answering, which consumed his primordial spirit. He then asked, Elder Heaven Ancestor, you're so knowledgeable and knowledgeable. Is there no way for Xiaoma to recover? Although Xiaoma's original purpose of occupying Xiao Chen's body was to allow him to be reborn, Xiao Chen no longer blamed him. Instead, he hoped that he could be saved. After all, Xiaoma had been with him for so long. He was diligent and hardworking. He had already made up for his mistakes. Moreover, the reason why he was injured this time was to save Xiao Chen's life. There is a way, but it's very troublesome. Elder Heaven Ancestor pondered for a while, then sighed and said, you must first find a suitable container to put Xiaoma's primordial spirit in. Then, take him to a place with sufficient demonic qi so that he can absorb enough demonic qi to recover. Where am I supposed to find a container in such a short period of time? Even if I find one, I don't have a suitable place for Xiaoma to absorb demonic qi. Xiao Chen smiled bitterly. He suddenly thought of something and quickly asked, Elder Heaven Ancestor, I remember you once said that my primordial qi can be transformed into anything in the world, right? Can't I use my primordial qi to inject it into him? Not yet. Elder Heaven Ancestor rejected Xiao Chen's suggestion and explained, because Xiaoma's primordial spirit relies on demonic qi to survive. Although primordial qi can also be transformed for his use, his primordial spirit is so weak. There's no way for him to absorb your mutated primordial qi. It will only make him dissipate faster. Do I have to break into the lair of the ghost cultivation sect? There is enough demonic qi there, but I'm afraid that Xiaoma will die before I get there. Xiao Chen said with a bitter face. In fact, Xiao Chen had another worry. If he went to the lair of the ghost cultivation sect and the two sides got into a fight, it would be hard to say if he could escape unscathed, let alone help Xiaoma recover his demonic qi. Right. I have another way. Elder Heaven Ancestor was silent for a while, then suddenly shouted. Oh my God, Elder Heaven Ancestor, you scared me. Xiao Chen suddenly shivered and said angrily, if you have a way, say it quickly. What's with all the fuss? Xiao Chen was really speechless at Elder Heaven Ancestor. At this time, this old urchin still had the time to keep him in suspense. Didn't I just think of it? Elder Heaven Ancestor smiled a little awkwardly and quickly described. First, use your primordial qi to make a barrier just like what you did in the Venerable Realm. Make it 100 times smaller, then release Xiaoma's primordial spirit from your body and put it in the barrier to protect it. Put it in the barrier? What's the use of that? Xiao Chen asked doubtfully, can my barrier be a container for his primordial spirit? Of course not. Do you think your barrier is so omnipotent? Elder Heaven Ancestor first refuted Xiao Chen mercilessly, then explained with a little excitement. After you release Xiaoma's primordial spirit, fuse it into the flying sword. When your flying sword has a primordial spirit, it can be reforged by the fire of the underworld. Are you serious? Can this work? Xiao Chen listened to Elder Heaven Ancestor's joking idea and asked suspiciously. Of course it can. If you don't believe me, who else can you believe? The more Elder Heaven Ancestor said, the happier he became. He continued with a smile, when you're done, not only can you protect Xiaoma, but you can also use the flying sword. Xiao Chen frowned and thought for a long time. He found that apart from this method, he really couldn't think of any other solution, so he had no choice but to accept Elder Heaven Ancestor's suggestion. However, before building the barrier, Xiao Chen said worriedly, "I say, Elder Heaven Ancestor. In this way, although Xiaoma's primordial spirit is saved, he still can't absorb the evil qi. Should I find a time to go to the Ghost Cultivation Sect's territory? I find that you're really stupid and naive." Elder Heaven Ancestor lectured, "Won't the Ghost Cultivation Sect send people over in a few days? At that time, those people will definitely be escorted by a lot of evil cultivators. As long as you kill a few of them with the flying sword, won't Xiaoma's primordial spirit be able to absorb the evil qi?" Chapter 1274. Originally, Song Huawu and Xiao Xiao had no intention of coming to Awakening Heaven Sect. When Hong Zhu and the others brought the injured Song Qingshu and third young master Hong back to the Hong family, they had told them that they had met Xiao Chen in the Venerable Realm. He looked fine and was not kidnapped by anyone, nor did he seem to be injured. What the F***CK? How the F***CK is this possible? Xiao Chen could naturally hear that the Elder Heaven Ancestor was scolding him, but he didn't care too much because this was really a good idea. Although Song Qingshu didn't have a particularly good impression of the demonic cultivator, in any case, the two sides would be considered to have a cooperative relationship in the future. Since he was in the territory of Awakening Heaven Sect, he couldn't treat them lightly. Little Miss Xing and Song Qingshu didn't have much friendship before, and now that the Ghost Cultivation Sect hadn't arrived yet, she didn't plan to meet second young master Song so soon. Unexpectedly, the other party took the initiative to greet her. Could it be that there was a problem with their sacrifice? Master. Thank you so much. I didn't expect you. And Xiaomo was very grateful to Xiao Chen for his rescue, but before he could express his gratitude, he felt that he had been covered by a transparent cover. After about an hour or so, the bluish-purple flames emitted by the fire of the underworld gradually weakened. At the same time, a brand new flying sword appeared in front of Xiao Chen. This time, with the integration of Xiaoma's spirit, the new flying sword seemed to be sharper than before, and there was a faint black light. Not long ago, little Miss Xing had received the news that Song Qingshu had come to Awakening Heaven Sect. It seemed that he had come to send something to Song Weizong, and she heard that he had brought a few beauties with him. However, when he saw that Xiao Chen was also present and standing behind Xing Gongzi, Song Qingshu couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. A trace of doubt flashed in his eyes and he muttered in his heart, "Why is this kid here?" And it seems that his relationship with sect leader Xing is quite close. Is he a disciple of Awakening Heaven Sect? No wonder he was so arrogant in the Venerable Realm. What is this fellow doing here? Hearing that Song Qingshu had come over, little Lady Xing couldn't help but mutter in surprise. Most importantly, Xiao Chen could feel that Xiaoma's primordial spirit in the flying sword was safe and sound. It was no longer fading and about to disappear like before, but had stabilized. The next step was to wait for the Ghost Cultivation Sect to send someone over so that Xiaoma could have a full meal. She glanced at Xiao Chen who was beside her, and saw that he was also at a loss. It seemed that he didn't know what Song Qingshu was here for either. Xiao Chen summoned his flying sword and couldn't wait to test it in the open heaven gate. He found that the flying sword's flying speed seemed to be faster than before. It was even faster than Bai Zai's running speed. However, Jean Beibei, who was the most active in looking for Xiao Chen, didn't agree with this plan. She always had a strong hunch that if she went to the Jia family she would find nothing. Instead, she would meet Xiao Chen and Cheng Menjing in the open heaven gate. Now that the Elder Heaven Ancestor had guaranteed that everything would be fine, there must be no mistake. Xiao Chen's mood turned gloomy. He said eagerly, "Then let's not waste time. I'll make a primordial qi barrier for Xiaoma now. Nethery, you're in charge of forging the sword. Hurry up." After some spying, Hongzhu finally learned that Xiao Chen had joined the Jia family's team. As a venerable mentor, he led the Jia family to cultivate in the secret realm. Fortunately, after seeing Xiao Chen, Hongzhu already had a clear direction to look for. He was no longer as clueless as before. Seeing Miss Xing's pleading eyes, Xiao Chen nodded slightly. He didn't object. Miss Xing received the signal. She waved her hand and said, "Got it? Let him in." After meeting up with Song Weizong and helping the girls settle down, Song Qingshu stood at the door of the room for a long time. He decided to pay a visit to the new sect leader, Xing Gongzi. Along with Hongzhu, in addition to Shinjing Xian and Xia Fei, There were also 3 girls, Jin Beibei, Song Huawu and Xiao Xiao. They were also in the team. Xiao Chen was afraid that Xiaoma would speak again and consume more of his vital spirit. He immediately made a barrier with his primordial qi and sealed his vital spirit in the body of the flying sword. Then he urged the fire of the underworld to recast the flying sword as soon as possible. While treating Song Qingshu and third young master Hong Zhu sent Hong Ying's team to gather information about the team entering the Venerable Realm. Before they set off, Hong Zhu told Song Huawu and the other 2 girls that Xiao Chen had settled in the Jia family. Therefore, Song Huawu and Xiao Xiao wanted to set off to the Jia family to find Xiao Chen's whereabouts while Hong Zhu and the others were going to open Heavenly Gate. Not long after the disciple left, Song Qingshu strode into the room with her head held high. When the girls heard this, they were excited and comforted. They kept asking Hong Zhu and Xin Jingshen about other things about Xiao Chen. Only then did Hong Zhu and the others remember that they knew nothing except that Xiao Chen had entered the Venerable Realm with Cheng Menjiang. When they received this news, Song Weizong happened to send back the news that Open Heavenly Gate intended to cooperate with them. The Song family and the Hong family discussed and decided to let Song Qingshu, who had just recovered from her injuries, lead Hong Zhu and the others to Open Heavenly Gate. Jin Beibei had always believed in her premonitions. This time, in order to persuade Song Huawu and Xiao Xiao to go to Open Heavenly Gate together, she tried all kinds of ways. In the end, the 2 girls could not resist her eloquence and had no choice but to agree. A group of female soldiers set off in a grandiose manner. Sect leader Xing, the second young master of the Song family, has come to visit and is waiting in the side hall. When Xing Beibei and Xiao Chen were discussing the sacrificial ceremony, a disciple of Open Heavenly Gate knocked on the door and came in. He reported respectfully. As the cultivation sects wanted to start the sacrificial ceremony as soon as possible, they moved relatively fast. Just 1 day later, Song Qingshu, who had recovered from her injuries, led a group of guards from the cultivation sects and escorted Hong Zhu, Hong Yan, and a few other girls with spiritual qi to Open Heavenly Gate and met up with Song Weizong. Elder Heaven Ancestor was speechless about Xiao Chen's straightforward character. Since someone would come to him, why would he waste his energy to go to their house? Moreover, he might not be able to settle everything even if he went there. The Xiao Chen was so stupid. Chapter 1275. Lady Xing waited for a while. When she saw that Song Qingshu was staring at Xiao Chen in shock and did not take the initiative to state the purpose of his visit, she could only say, "Young Master Song, I've troubled you to bring the sacrificial items here. You must be tired from the long journey, right? I wonder if you and your companions are used to the accommodations and food that the Awakening Heaven sect has prepared?" "It's quite good," sect leader Xing is very considerate. Little girl Xing's voice caused Song Qingshu to return to his senses. Only then did he realize that he had been a bit rash, so he hurriedly expressed his thanks. Little girl Xing waved her hand and indifferently said, "It's what I should do. If you have any special requests, feel free to mention them. I will do my best to make them better." "Then I will thank sect leader Xing in advance." Song Qingshu took out an exquisite wooden box from his bosom and forced a smile on his face. "In order to congratulate you on becoming the new sect leader of the Awakening Heaven sect, our immortal sect has specially prepared a small congratulatory gift. I hope that sect leader Xing will kindly accept it." Little girl Xing was slightly startled. She stood up and received the box, then placed it on the table. Without opening it, she smiled and expressed her thanks. "Young Master Song is very thoughtful. The Awakening Heaven sect is very grateful for the congratulatory gift." Originally, Song Qingshu was just going through the motions. He wanted to use the gift as an opportunity to promote the relationship between the Immortal sect and the Awakening Heaven sect. Seeing that little girl Xing had accepted the box, he did not plan on saying anything more. He cupped his hands and prepared to leave. However, before he could open his mouth, he saw a hand suddenly reach out and pick up the box on the table. Song Qingshu was immediately startled. He opened his mouth to shout, only to see Xiao Chen swagger out from behind little girl Xing. "Let me take a look. What kind of things have been delivered?" Xiao Chen chuckled and raised his eyebrows. He casually picked up the wooden box and opened it in one go. "You. Rude." Song Qingshu hadn't expected Xiao Chen to do this. Her eyes immediately burned with anger, and she glared fiercely at Xiao Chen. The sect master hadn't even said anything, yet you, a sect disciple, had casually opened a guest's gift. Don't you know your place? Xiao Chen couldn't be bothered with Song Qingshu's accusations. He looked down at the things in the box and found that they were all precious treasures and a few rare healing pills. After carefully identifying the treasures in the wooden box, Xiao Chen curled his lips in disdain. If it was in the past, he might have thought that these things were quite high-end. However, during this period of time, under Sky's guidance, Xiao Chen had gradually learned to distinguish which herbs were relatively rare and which were common goods that weren't worth mentioning. He wasn't like in the past where he viewed everything as a treasure. I say, aren't your cultivation sects too stingy? These things can be found everywhere on the street. How can you take them out? Do you really think that our Awakening Heaven sect Master Xing hasn't seen anything good? Xiao Chen snorted and casually threw the wooden box on the table. In reality, Xiao Chen's words were a bit exaggerated. The treasures in the box were not bad, but compared to the ones he had collected in the Venerable Realm, they were clearly several streets behind. Having already seen good things, Xiao Chen naturally didn't place these herbs in his eyes. Arrogant fellow. This is a congratulatory gift from our sect to Sect Master Xing. You are just a small disciple. What right do you have to look through it? How many good things have you seen? What right do you have to say that these treasures are everywhere? Song Qingshu felt humiliated and couldn't help but retort angrily. If it weren't for Sect Master Xing's face, Song Qingshu would have already beheaded Xiao Chen on the spot. A small fry from the Awakening Heaven sect, relying on the fact that he could stand by the sect master's side, dared to speak without thinking. Did he really think that their sect was easy to bully? Of course I've seen a lot. Xiao Chen crossed his arms in front of his chest and expressionlessly said, Our sect Master Xing has traveled to famous mountains and rivers since she was young. She has seen countless rare and precious herbs. She has already lost interest in these things since she was 3 years old. Little girl Xing secretly rolled her eyes. Xiao Chen really knew how to talk. When did she run off to travel? Why don't I have any recollection of it? Sneaking another glance at the open wooden box on the table, little girl Xing discovered that there were quite a few good herbs and pills inside. She couldn't help but mutter to herself, Song Qingshu's congratulatory gift is quite good. Even if it's not good, it's still a token of goodwill. Why is Xiao Chen being so picky? Could it be that he and Song Qingshu have a grudge in the past? Isn't this not giving him any face? Little girl Xing pondered over her own thoughts, but in Song Qingshu's eyes, her silence was seen as tacit approval of Xiao Chen. Song Qingshu was somewhat unhappy. How could he make a mistake when he sent a gift? However, he was currently in someone else's territory, so Song Qingshu endured and didn't flare up. He just casually cupped his hands and said, Since the Awakening Heaven sect doesn't like the things of our sect, then you can do with this congratulatory gift. Goodbye. Hey, wait a moment. Without waiting for Song Qingshu to leave, Xiao Chen suddenly called out to him, Why are you leaving just like that? Considering that you're new here, we'll let bygones be bygones this time. Go and prepare another congratulatory gift. At least send some top-level heavenly materials and earthly treasures, cultivation manuals, top-grade elixirs and so on. Bring all the valuable things over. Valuable things? What do you think counts as valuable? Song Qingshu was so angry that he laughed and asked coldly. Xiao Chen rubbed his chin and seemed to think seriously for a while before saying, Well, it has to at least be able to enter the eyes of our sect Master Xing. My ass. Brat, I think you're really courting death. I already let you off in the Venerable Realm. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Song Qingshu was completely infuriated by Xiao Chen's attitude. He circulated his mental cultivation method and instantly displayed his venerable level 5 cultivation. A majestic pressure swept towards Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. It wasn't because of the pressure. After all, he was an expert of the profound ascension stage. To him, this little bit of pressure was basically negligible. It was just that Song Qingshu's impulsive attitude made Xiao Chen feel a little unhappy. Could it be that this brat still couldn't see the situation clearly? This was the Awakening Heaven sect's territory. He actually wanted to act rashly in front of the sect Master Xing. Was this really okay? Sure enough, when the little girl felt the pressure, her face immediately darkened. She was very dissatisfied with Song Qingshu's behavior. She said coldly, Young Master Song, isn't it a little inappropriate to teach a disciple of our sect in front of this sect master? Chapter 1276. Although she was somewhat puzzled by Xiao Chen's mocking of Song Qingshu, Xing was naturally biased towards Xiao Chen's side. Moreover, she was very clear that Song Qingshu was definitely not Xiao Chen's opponent. Xing Gongzi had taken advantage of the fact that the two hadn't started fighting to resolve the conflict between the two sides. Xing Gongzi also wanted to save Song Qingshu's life. If Xiaoqin got angry and killed Song Qingshu, then the immortal cultivation sect would use this as a reason to make things difficult for them. Hearing Xing Gongzi's voice, Song Qingshu was stunned for a moment. His head, which had been clouded by anger, instantly sobered up. He also realized that what he had done wasn't very appropriate. Although he only wanted to teach Xiaoqin a lesson, they were currently in Awakening Heaven sect. If he made a move against a disciple in front of the sect master, it would be a serious matter. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the immortal cultivation sect was provoking Awakening Heaven sect. Apologies, sect master Xing. I was too impulsive. In order to avoid trouble, Song Qingshu took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He said indifferently, I have never seen the behavior of your disciple before, so I was presumptuous and wanted to help sect master Xing teach him a lesson. I was overstepping my boundaries. Song Qingshu was somewhat dissatisfied with sect master Xing's behavior of shielding his disciple. Therefore, although he apologized, his words were still full of sarcasm. He didn't feel apologetic at all. Forget it. Both of you are in the wrong. Just restrain yourselves a little. Xing Gongzi waved her hand and mediated. She could naturally hear the sarcasm in Song Qingshu's words. However, Xing Gongzi didn't care too much in order to keep the peace. She only pretended that she didn't hear it and casually said, no matter how heavy the congratulatory gift from the immortal cultivation sect is, this sect master is very grateful. I will accept it. Young Master Song must be tired after a whole day of traveling. You should return to your room and rest. Song Qingshu wasn't stupid. Anyone could see that Lady Xing was biased towards Xiaoqin. He felt even more disdain for Xiaoqin's act of living off a woman. However, he had no other choice. He could only cup his hands at Lady Xing and say, if that's the case, I'll take my leave. After saying that, Song Qingshu glared fiercely at Xiaoqin again. Thinking that he would teach this brat a lesson sooner or later, he stormed off in a huff. Amazing. You actually managed to escape unscathed after acting tough in front of this young master. Your luck is pretty good. As he watched Song Qingshu leave angrily, the corners of Xiaoqin's mouth curled up as he mocked in a voice that was neither loud nor soft. Song Qingshu hadn't gone far, so he naturally heard Xiaoqin's deliberate words. However, he could only pretend that he didn't hear it now. He repeatedly thought about how he could find an opportunity to beat up Xiaoqin. It would be best if Xing Gongzi didn't find out. As he pondered, he returned to his residence. Song Qingshu couldn't vent his anger, so he sat unhappily in the outer hall. As long as he thought about Xiaoqin's arrogant and despotic face, Song Qingshu would feel a fire from the soles of his feet all the way to the top of his head. He was very unhappy. In order to calm his mood, Song Qingshu simply picked up the teapot on the table and poured himself a cup of water. When he was about to drink it, he was scalded again. Damn it, even a cup dares to bully me. The infuriated Song Qingshu slammed the cup on the ground and smashed it into pieces. Qingshu, what's wrong with you? Who are you so angry with for no reason? Song Weizong heard the commotion and quickly walked out from the inner room. He looked strangely at the broken cup on the ground and asked in astonishment. In Song Weizong's impression, although Song Qingshu was usually a little arrogant, he was still quite rational. Even when he was angry, he had never smashed a cup. This time it seemed a little abnormal. Hongzhu and the other women were chatting in the room. When they heard the commotion, they also ran out to see what was going on. In the end, they found Song Qingshu fuming with anger and smashing cups. The women all revealed looks of contempt on their faces. This person was too much. How could he throw a tantrum in Qi Tianmen's residence? He even smashed other people's cups. Did he really think that this was his own Song family and he could do whatever he wanted? Grandfather, you really can't blame me for this. It's all because of that follower of sect master Xing. He's simply too much. Song Qingshu's anger had yet to dissipate. She slammed the table heavily and vented her anger. What did you say? Sect leader Xing's follower? Did you provoke Ajian? Song Weizong was shocked and could not help but break out in a cold sweat for Song Qingshu. The tragic scene of West Mountain Mad Demon being beaten up was still vivid in his mind. He did not expect that Song Qingshu would offend Ajian so soon after coming to Qi Tian sect. Song Weizong was also really anxious. He immediately said with a sullen face, before you set off from the Song family, I had already told you. After you arrived at Qi Tianmen, I reminded you again that you must not have any conflict with Ajian. Not only is he the mastermind behind Qitian Men, but his strength is also outstanding. Even West Mountain Mad Demon is just a piece of trash in his hands. How could you be so careless? Hurry up and apologize to him. Grandfather, what are you talking about? I didn't see Jian. Besides, you have already reminded me so many times. How could I make such a mistake again? Song Qingshu saw that Song Weizong was so anxious that his face was red. He quickly waved his hand and explained, "The person I am talking about is Xiao Chen. He's the fellow I mentioned to you when I returned from the Exalt Secret Realm." It turned out that Song Qingshu had been seriously injured in the Venerable Realm. After Hongzhu and the others carried him back for treatment, he found a time to talk to Song Weizong about everything that happened in the Venerable Realm. Naturally, he mentioned that Xiao Chen had helped the women break through. When Song Weizong heard about this, he was also very surprised. He repeatedly reminded Song Qingshu that if he met Xiao Chen again in the future, he must invite him back to the Song family. After all, Xiao Chen's ability could be said to be rare in the world. If he could be used by the Song family or even the entire immortal cultivation sect, it would save a lot of detours for the disciples of the sect. Before Song Weizong could speak, Song Huawu, who was standing to the side, suddenly heard Xiao Chen's name. Her whole body trembled and she rushed over, grabbed Song Qingshu's collar and asked loudly, "Song Qingshu, what did you say just now? Xiao Chen is also in Qitian Men? You have seen him?" Hearing Song Huawu's shout, the women also came to their senses. They all had different expressions. Before Song Qingshu could answer, Jin Beibei's loud voice rang out, "Ow, ow, ow. Xiao Chen's cousin-in-law is really here." Super Prophet Bei's sixth sense is working again. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.